events for 2018, and then maybe get some thoughts and maybe some discussion at the end, and figure out, plot a course for what we want to do in 2018. Ann's going to help me out with the PowerPoint and kind of push us through it. All right. Some of this is a little bit of recap, but go ahead, Ann. The types of events we do are the school education programs, the landscape workshops. We have partner or our / contribution events. I'll explain those a little more later. Speakers Bureau, you're familiar with that. Booths and street fairs that we go to. And then, of course, our Water Academy. Go ahead. So the school education programs, in-class, STEAM and STEM events. This is for grade schools. Tours of the district facilities, I think you've all have seen that. We go to Jack's Pond Park, Heritage Park, do hands-on history with Tanis. We do partnerships with San Diego County Office of Education, where they bring out the green machine and the splash labs. We have that poster contest we do with the children. And then the same types of things for junior high school, college, including like the video contests, the stormwater pollution prevention program internships. We partnership with Gear Up. And then sometimes schools will ask us to come to career fairs. Sometimes it's Gear Up, but sometimes individual schools will just ask us to go ahead and come on out. You can forward us one, man. And just some pictures. There's STEM at Palomar, and we can go on to the next one. What do we got? The calendar contest in the upper left, Jack's Pond in the upper right, and then Lisa, and then there's Tanis there at Hands-On History. Thanks, Ann. And some students out front, one of the 5th grade tours, all posing for the picture. They come in on the bus and we take them around. Go ahead, Ann. And so landscape workshops.
Can I just ask a quick question on a couple of those things before we move?
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, approximately how much of our efforts are in those different levels? Like you do college and you do high school and you do elementary.
It seems like most of it's really elementary. High school and junior high are harder to reach in that they have specific goals that they have to achieve with the students, and there's less time to kind of branch off and talk about something different. Gear Up with the college, it's almost like, you know, high with the kids and down with middle school, a little back up, and then a little back up with college. So junior high is really the hard one, for whatever reason.
No, I think it is on a lot of things. Kids don't want to be focused in the money they're spent on. But, and are we doing anything at all with CSUSM? In regards, except, I mean, I know we do. They have their water
more at that level than this team here.
This team,
yeah.
Okay. And then there was something else. I wanted to ask approximately. Do you know? You don't have to tell me right now, but I'm just kind of curious. Like, how many splash mobile events do we have in a year approximately?
Yeah.
I kind of like to know what the numbers of those are. I'm just
Sure.
curious.
In fact, we've had quite a few of the splash ones, about 5 this year, which is kind of a lot. They're pricey. They're about $700.
And that was my other question. Is at some point you could? I'm sure the whole board would be interested, but if we're going to do it here, I'd just be curious of what the cost is per the event and the time invested in it. Because I know sometimes it can be cheap, but it turns out it took a lot of staff time, and that's important to know too.
Yeah.
So I want my return for investment.
Yeah. Well, and
profit loss.
I'm not sure I've ever asked everybody, like when we do the student tours here, to put it all on their time card that way. I don't know that
Oh, I
it's
don't want it
captured.
real specific.
Yeah.
I'm thinking much more vaguely than that. Like you're saying, if we do the thing with Tanis,
Right.
it's usually, you know, one
One of us,
person,
yeah.
and it's normally pretty set.
Yep.
It's a couple hours. If we do this, and it takes 3 people, and that's all. I'm just real curious, and it's not a big,
Just want to know?
not a
Yeah.
huge time investment.
Yeah.
In my question,
Okay.
but I would be curious.
I think in reality it's cheaper for us to do the splash lab than it is to actually have someone come here and take all the staff offline and give the tour.
And what I was wondering, and
It's
there's
just
some
the personnel
advantage to
costs.
be able to do that.
Yeah, and
And
it changes things.
And it also just gives you a chance to say you're partnering, because the Splash Lab is also partnering. Is it through the Water Authority as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I like anytime we say we've done partnering.
Yeah. The part that's interesting with the Splash Lab is that it's, you know, it's different and it comes to the school and it makes it kind of easier on the school. They don't have to
Yeah,
get the
right.
bus and all that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's upsides to them for doing that. But you know, there's good things to have the students here and actually look at the
Yeah.
combination truck in
I think that's a great
action.
thing to do that, but if we're gonna do that, then we should, you know, balance some out as well. Not meaning to make more work.
No problem. Landscape workshops, just water smart landscape contests. You guys have seen that, and Alicia puts together that video where we got the 3
Yep.
winners. We do going native workshops and irrigation system workshops and succulent workshops. Go ahead and roll us forward, Ann. This one's at Green Thumb, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
then the next slide is by Green Thumb, and then I think the Waterwise one was at, I think that was out at Tanis's place at Heritage Park, I think. As I recall.
Something was out there, wasn't there?
Yeah, she has them all the time. So partner events. So these are ones where we're doing less. There's less labor intensive on us. The State of the City address and meet your elected officials. That's where we provide the centerpieces. Volunteer appreciation events, kind of the same thing. A lot of entities will have healthy living fairs and will just invite us out to have a table
Yep.
out there. Sometimes it's HOA of a mobile home park, that type of thing. And then blood drives, and go ahead and we got some pictures, blood drives and centerpieces and meet your elected officials. So these are kind of partnerships, but we don't have a big burden with these types
Uh-huh.
of things.
At the blood drive, are we like giving water or something? What are we doing at the blood drives, as far as our being there?
Well, it comes
Besides
here.
giving blood,
we
you
host-
give
we
blood.
host
Oh,
this-
you host
Yeah,
the event.
so
Yeah.
they go in our parking lot and
Excellent.
And typically we get a few,
Huh?
Do you know who that is?
No. Who is that?
that's my daughter.
Oh yeah, I sort of recognize the grin.
Yeah, so you know you gotta con people into coming. So both son and daughter have come and donated. to
And I
help.
knew you had
Get our
one here. I
totals
didn't even think about it. Okay, thanks.
So Speakers Bureau. So each quarter we do outreach, emails out to the community, the Lake San Marcos Community Association, the HOAs, the mobile home parks, the service groups, trying to get presentations. And as you probably all know, we get a lot of action when there's a drought and there's
Right.
good stories to share. A little less when there's less going on. But we have all those topics that we can do presentations on, overview and state issues.
Towards
and so forth.
that end, I would like to get the HOAs in my district, because I think part of maybe what we should individually look at as board members is making a pitch ourselves. Because I mean, I don't know what your response is traditionally with HOAs and groups, or if it is, oh yeah, another piece of paper.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's a good idea, we'll let you know. But if there is a personal connection, it might be a little more of an opportunity to have this presentation take place.
Well, I tell you what, we've got a flyer that we already have. I think Alicia created it back in the day, and I can just get you some and
Yeah.
just put them out there.
Well,
I mean, honestly, I would appreciate
The connection or the address or the
it.
whoever,
It's the
Absolutely.
warm lead,
Yeah,
you know,
there you go.
getting us in
Yeah.
the door.
All right,
And in fact, and if you take us on to the next one, I think that's a crop from that picture Speakers Bureau is from
Uh-huh.
that flyer.
good.
And then, you know, Rotary events, Lake San Marcos Community. I'm going to go there in March, and I think Director Sinella jumped on it as wanted to come as well.
Sure.
And then I think that's Palomar Estates East. It's one of the mobile home parks, and
Mhm.
they're set up to have us there.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Ann.
One thing.
Oh, sorry. Go.
That's just as a little comment, kind of in relationship. I like the idea of sometimes, you know, people don't. If they thought they had an opportunity to meet their representatives, I'm just throwing out the idea of trying something where it's, you know, meet your board member, and you actually specifically target Division 2 or 3
Yeah,
or 4
right.
or 5.
yeah.
And you have an event where people can come and meet their board members. Now, obviously, I don't want it to become one big Hollow Valley Who Vote For Me crowd, but I do want them to know who they are, and I think that would be a really easy way, but it would be sponsored through the district, and you go to the division, and if he's got 17 HOAs and my issue is pump zones and agriculture,
Yeah.
we could focus it to the gist of the, you know, I'm sure each division's quite different.
Yep.
I'm forgetting, is it Hal's, or who has like the San Alejo and then
That's
the lake, so I think
Like-
that might be a fun way.
Yeah,
And then it's a different title than come learn about the Bay Delta. And it may
Yeah.
turn out we put ourselves on the skewer for doing it, but I think that would be
no,
a once a year
the
thing.
thing
or-
that's really ideal is there's good, I mean, I'm thinking of some, there's good locations in each division that those would play out well for,
Uh-huh.
you know.
Oh,
Out
great.
at Heritage Park would work up in your division.
And Jack
And
Pond.
you could go to
and-
one of the breweries in yours.
I'll be there, I'll help you.
Oh, yeah,
set
there you
up.
go.
Oh, well, I'll open
Yeah.
a brewery.
Okay,
That'll
if
help
that's what it
my-
takes to get people there.
You can have a poker game
Division
and
one
have people
beer.
show up.
So Director Evans, I'm here, like, an event for each of the directors in their district to present issues of interest to that.
And they specifically are targeting that, so I don't know if it's individual flyers to those accounts in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Other people can show up, but that's the idea, is we're gonna promote our board, and we're gonna
Yeah.
promote the boards of LIDU, and we're gonna promote all, because there's so much people don't.
No.
And they might
sweet.
come for that, even if it does come to complain,
Yeah,
it's cool.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. That's
Alright.
a great idea.
I think that would be.
And completely doable.
Oh,
Yeah,
good,
okay.
great.
Okay, so then we've got booths and street fairs, and here's our list of events: Spring Festival, Home Depot Plant Fair, Earth Day, Junior Rangers National Night Out, Fire Department's Open House, the Fall Street Fair, and then the Because I Care event. And I need to point out that the Fire Department Open House and Because I Care used to be the same event.
And
They
Huh.
used to be connected to each other, and I've been to it. And the Because I Care is a senior event, and strangely, you'd be at the event, and there weren't any seniors there.
Huh.
And I think part of it was kind of where it was located. It wasn't real conducive to pulling in seniors, and it would seem like it would be some families with children and they're looking for free stuff. But I remember one of the guys was there doing a Covered California thing, trying to get seniors enrolled in health programs. And there really was he didn't get anybody.
Right.
He's like, why? I'm wasting my time at this thing, which is why I think they split the two events.
And so now it's at Cal State?
Yeah, so now it's at Cal State San Marcos, and so we can check and see if it'll get enough activity. It really was really
You know, it
down.
makes a lot of sense to me though. The fire department usually means a lot of kids and a lot
Yeah.
of family.
Yeah,
And the older people, they don't really, they care about the fire, but they're not gonna put up with that.
I think that's why they split. You know, I didn't get a straight answer from anybody. You know,
Yeah,
any kind of
right. Oh,
divorce,
yeah.
you're not going to hear the whole story.
Yeah.
But they
Exactly.
decided to split them out. But those are the ones that we've got on the calendar that are kind of the standard ones.
Mm-hmm.
And there may be other things that pop up from time to time, but they're more of a if and when. They're not.
And these are normally a booth,
Yes,
and we're presenting what?
you're going to see.
In general, a variety of.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
it, it's
we're
coming
gonna
up.
see.
It's coming. You're good. So there's Director Sinella, upper left at Because I Care. Upper right is Chick-fil-A's Earth Fair. Lower left is at Home Depot at their plant fair. Lower right is Fall Festival. Go ahead, Ann. And so here's the types of things that are at these displays. Upper left is Jessica. There's one of our banners. Upper right, I get my kids to work at these things. Upper right is Riley, there with the drought at a plant fair. We typically give away succulents, and then I think you all know we have like I call it a mystery fountain, a mystery water.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And they love that.
Yeah, that can be added. The trick on that one is you need to have water and power available,
Yeah.
and not every place is going to have that. In fact, some of them there's just no power source. There just
Yeah.
isn't. And go ahead and take us along. So this is
You
kind of
mean
what,
it isn't really magic?
Sorry, we're letting you see behind
Yeah.
the curtain now.
not quite the Harry Potter type thing quite yet. So this is what we have with our standard booth setup: canopy, table, tablecloth, and chairs. Bring some banners, information brochures, materials, display racks, some type of giveaway. Something that Glenn was talking about that I really like is a good idea is to bring out like an iPad and be able to let people see some of our YouTube videos where we've got the
Great
history of
idea.
the department.
Mhm.
He was talking about the GIS features so that people could look up their house and see where their meter's at and where their infrastructure's
Yeah.
at and things like that.
Wow, that's a
And
good idea.
then the mystery faucet if the power and the water are available. Go ahead, Ann. Banner wise, we had a lot of drought banners, but without the drought, we haven't really been taking them out. So Alicia came up with some concepts, and Glenn had some ideas of we could put out some things when we have a big CIP project that really focuses on here's what this CIP project is. Just right now, there's not such a juicy CIP project to really talk about. There's some
Is
work
there
on
a
pressure
banner
reducing.
when we finish though? Because sometimes it don't have to be in the middle one. It might be, this is what we've done
Yeah.
and would be impressive.
That's
You know,
true.
I think people forget not that, the big tanks up there, and there's a lot of things we've done that are important, or you jog their memory, or they love seeing the guys, all mucked up and
Yeah.
crawling through tunnels and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's a way of showing that we're employees, not structures, and
Well, and I thought, and this is just a concept,
there's
so
careers in
this
it.
is
I love
is for you to talk about. We've got kind of the three things that we do: the water, the wastewater, and the recycled water.
Right?
Tried to come up with a color sequence for each one, kind of using our colors that we have on our in our
Yeah.
logo,
Mm-hmm.
and trying not to have the wastewater one be some off-putting color. And,
I like
and
the
recycled
purple.
water is obviously the purple for the
Yeah.
purple pipe.
Sure.
But trying to show the big infrastructure, but also the people.
Yeah.
And those can just always be there. They can always be there. And if you imagine most of the time you're at a table and there's banners behind you,
Mm-hmm.
and to put words on it can be okay, but it can be far away from
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
And so just big images and big words.
Mhm.
Yeah, hopefully the stuff behind the person at the booth is enough to draw people in.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
you can, give them propaganda and
Exactly.
handouts.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those are just the ones that I liked and Alicia liked. Just
Yeah.
big
No.
tank water, because that one's people are gonna ask you that.
Yes.
I mean, when I first came here and I was in an interview here, I was looking behind me. I was like, wow,
Pretty amazing.
those
Yeah.
are big
Yeah.
tanks. Huh?
So this is our boardroom where it's kind of a
Yeah.
Roman
Yeah.
But
colors.
wastewater, and everybody has seen the combination truck, the Vector truck, but nobody knows where. They just see it drive around. They go, "What's that? What the heck is
Yeah.
that big truck?"
Yeah.
And do we ever, or is this like way out of line expense-wise to have any of our equipment show up? For example, we have the little old Jeep.
Jeep. Yeah.
Oh,
Is it still running?
yeah, it's still running. I'd love to take the Jeep
I
there.
just
I've been
think
waiting for an excuse
It's
to drive that
rare.
thing.
I think we should do something, and even if it turns out you go and their kids can go in a little circle in the Jeep and someone drives them around. I think that's way better even than the Christmas parade if our Jeep showed up, or if there was a situation where we could have
The Vector truck.
the Vector truck. It
Yeah.
may only be there for an hour,
Yeah.
but I think it would be so cool if someone had that. What's that? The hazard suit thing.
Yeah.
You
hazmat.
the hazmat. If you just had it there for them to see,
Mhm.
with a picture of someone in it,
Much like a fire truck demonstration.
Staying
Yeah.
Kids
there.
can crawl
Those
on
are
it,
that
and
would
walk
be
around
to
it,
children.
touch it.
Yeah.
be cool.
Yeah.
And I think there's lots of stuff available if it's not a big expense. We've got to balance it, but I think you get a lot of people come because they'd be very, very curious.
Yeah.
And, I know how the grandkids, and even my kids, even until they were in middle school for sure, would just to be able to climb up and look in the fire engine. So
Yeah.
if we had one that they could
Yeah.
peek in the door, or someone sat up there and honked and scared them, whatever.
Yeah. No, they.
Or
I think it depends on the event, because if you look at the spring and fall fairs, the festivals, there's no way we could. I can't see a good way to incorporate it into
There's
there.
not
Just
really.
space
Not enough
limitation.
Yeah.
space.
But
Yeah.
there may be other events,
Yeah.
like if we're at the Heritage Park or
Uh-huh,
something,
yeah.
where there's more room and it's not a
Yeah.
space constraint, that we could do something like that.
Or where we have those board member events, we could bring a piece of equipment
Yeah.
out to it.
Yeah.
I
You
think
just have it in
that's-
the parking lot. Like
Yeah.
that's
I think that's
that's our
great. And
stuff
you
right
know,
there.
the fire departments are really good at that, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
They're very good at
Their
promoting.
trucks,
Yeah,
totally.
Well,
So-
everyone's,
Well, they got a lot of time on their hands. They're not
yeah,
doing that
Yeah, I
exactly.
know.
They're not
Nothing
doing
to
anything.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those trucks are pretty
Chef
interesting, you know,
classes and-
Yeah.
to walk around and
Yeah,
go, oh.
well, our construction crew, they had on take your kids to work day. You know, we took the kids out and they got to climb in the trucks, and it was
Yeah.
fun. You know, the kids all
I-
got in there
yeah.
and honked the horn.
And you know, once again, I know we want to keep our budget tight, but get a lot of kudos for things like
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, that would be,
Yeah.
I think that would be
And
well
it-
worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the trick is finding a way in a place
And-
to get a big piece of equipment. But even if we just bring the Jeep, you know,
Yeah.
But, I
Well,
mean,
you know
but
what?
like
We may
you were
want to
saying-
decide to hold an event here at our own place.
Well,
We
you know
may
what?
not-
We're gonna
not the
segue
water
in just a minute.
In the
So,
water
yeah.
academy, but
You
I
know-
Hold that
think-
thought, because we're going to talk about
Okay.
that in a second.
Hold it.
But we could talk to the chamber about the fair, if maybe, you know, there's an area next to our booth that, you know, maybe we gotta take up two booth areas or something, I don't know, they give us
We
a
could,
discount on it or something.
Yeah.
Cause we wanna present,
yeah.
I don't, or we move our booth to where the truck is,
Maybe
something
if we
like
asked
that.
them, they'd find, well, that would be
Yeah.
a good draw, so we'll do it, because it
Yeah.
will bring people to the fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, they
certainly
make room
motivating
for a
to
fire
get more-
yeah,
truck.
right,
They
they
wanna
just
Yeah.
talk with them.
And we basically we'd just be paying for extra space
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
just a street.
Yeah,
and we can
right.
park the vehicle on the street.
I don't know what those
And they
spaces
can
go
put
for
the,
nowadays.
It's not that bad. It's
Yeah, couple $100.
$275 or something like
Yeah,
that.
so you know, that
Yeah.
might be worth
We
it.
can pay
Yeah.
a couple extra and get a couple more spots.
Terrence has been trying to get her hands on that Jeep for years.
Oh.
She wants to keep it at the historical.
Who's that? Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
Janet.
but I think the fear was it's so in demand that it could get stolen.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
no,
exactly.
it's
I don't
too
know.
many-
Willie's,
it's
Yeah,
not
oh yeah, it's
protected
very
there.
much in
Yeah.
demand. Somebody, yeah,
Yeah.
that's, mm-hmm.
I have a little
yeah,
Jeep.
Dennis
No,
wants
but I
that.
think we've got a great opportunity
Oh, yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Oh, I have the equipment
Okay.
idea.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. So the Water Academy, so we've typically done one per year. Most recently, last October. The demand seems to support that.
Mm-hmm.
But as Betty was mentioning about, you know, open house type thing, you know, Director Martin was talking about maybe having two
Yep.
water academies. I worry that the demand won't be there,
Yeah.
and that we get a bus and we try and, you know, bring people in, and then we don't really fill the bus. And there's a certain amount of expense to that, in that Water Ops and Meadowlark really do a lot more work than I ever imagined to spiff things up, in that you don't want to take people out to
Yeah, right.
Twin Oaks and have it full of cobwebs, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's a lot of cleaning that goes into that before we let people look at it. But we could do maybe like a half-day academy where we do essentially what we do with the students, or essentially what we do with the customers here, whereas we bring them in, we talk, we do the 3 rotations, we feed them lunch, and then rather than taking them on the tour, we just let them go.
Let them go.
Yeah.
And the point being is we would feed them still, which
Yeah.
always, everybody likes the
Everybody
food.
likes food. You
Everybody
want some-
likes
yeah.
the food and has a good
Show
time.
up for the food.
There's
Yep.
a certain amount of the demographic that just isn't going to commit to a whole day. They just won't
Yeah.
do it.
No,
They're just-
It's
I
they're
very
not going to do
difficult.
it. And it's,
Yes, it is.
and a lot of times, honestly, they're weary at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's a long day.
Well, they're, you know, they're
Yeah.
some of our older population.
Yeah.
But doing a half day here
Yeah.
and doing a slide presentation and then bringing the groups in,
Yeah.
I think it was a great idea. And just see, you know,
Yeah,
The other thing is I think Glenn said is like, well, we can try it and see
Give it a
how it
shot.
goes, and give it a
I
shot.
definitely agree. You should
yeah.
try
And
it.
that way
I've
we
always
could, you know, we
wanted
could
us
have
to
the
do-
Vector truck out there and the
Yeah.
Jeep or whatever.
Yeah,
And,
well, they go see the Vector truck.
yeah, exactly. I remember
Right.
that.
It's a
Yeah.
pretty small investment.
Yeah.
We'll try it, and if it's successful, we'll continue to do it. If it's a bust, we'll just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We tried it, didn't work, or we tried it, and
That
we'll
was
do
great,
more.
and we'll
Yeah.
we'll do a
I think
short
that's a
one
great
and a long
idea.
one.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Give it a ride.
I think it's the
Because we do ours, when do we do ours? In October.
So I do the full one in
Yeah.
October,
So maybe
and then
one-
do it a half one in the springtime.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. I think that would be great.
I think you'd get a good better.
I think you'd get the same population, they just go for half.
Don't you? Do you always? You don't know. You don't. You haven't been doing it on Saturdays.
No, we could try it.
You know.
I just worry that, you know, people have
Everybody
things they
has
want
a
to do
full
on
schedule.
Saturday.
Oh,
yeah.
gosh, of course.
Yeah.
So Jim, you touched on something that's my biggest concern, is that we may cannibalize our fall demand if we offer something in the spring. So I think you have a limited market, and if you offer something in the spring and a lot of people go, and then we have our bigger fall event, the people that would have gone have already gone in the spring, and they're not gonna wanna go again. So that's the risk,
Yeah,
but
I think we
we
should
won't
give
know.
it a shot to see what really does happen,
It
because,
wouldn't happen this spring.
because
would
I'm
it?
wondering maybe the
Really?
opposite
That
would be
fast?
true.
We could probably get,
Because
it would probably be
half-day
late spring.
people go, dude, I can't do a whole day.
it could be a different.
Yeah, a different
market.
demographic, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, you may wanna even skew it a little bit. to
Well,
different
and maybe we do
demographics.
the half-day event on the Saturday and see if those people will free up, and other people who are working that can't get away for a day, they show up.
Yeah,
Then maybe that'll bring a younger group in.
That it absolutely might.
we could come up with some costs that show what a
Okay.
weekday event, because in a way, there's no cost because you're already paying our
Yeah,
guys,
right.
as opposed to bringing people in for
For the-
overtime.
Right, I know
Yeah.
that's the
weekend
challenge
event.
of a
Mhm.
weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
that's, I think we should get
And
some
they do have
costs.
to give, we should get the costs,
Get
and
the
I
costs and then
understand
make a
we're
decision.
Yeah,
asking
so if,
staff to give up a weekend as well, so, and then we could get your daughter to dress up as, you know,
Yeah.
Mrs. Bubble or,
yeah.
Mickey Mouse.
yeah, well, I was thinking of something, you know,
Something a little more nicer.
Yeah.
Nicer. Yeah. Well, I think that would be worthy to give it a shot. See what happens.
yeah,
Okay.
I do too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. what
I
else
think
you
I just have slides, a couple more slides of just the academy.
Yeah.
And then it was just.
That's always been you know, we've always had 40 people, haven't we?
Probably more than that.
We,
yeah.
we typically want to fill the bus, and the bus holds around 55 or so.
Okay.
And there's typically like 5 of us or 6 of us that are on the bus.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a good amount. What you want is that bus to be full.
Yes.
And Alicia, bless her soul, has managed to always have that bus kind of right at, you know, capacity.
Perfect.
But, you know, it's a big balancing act, and there's people that cancel, and there's people that cancel at the last
Okay,
minute.
now they should be honest, because my cousin-in-law is a member of the Academy Awards. And I've tried to bid on for 30 years, try to get, you know, the stand-ins when people get up to go to the
Yeah,
bathroom.
yeah.
They send a stand-in in.
You can't get in there.
Can't
huh?
get in. And I missed the, they do a lottery. They have people that put in a lottery and you get a ticket. You still have to pay the $750, but you
Wow.
get to go.
Wow.
I tried that too. And so you probably got slip-ins, fill the
Do you have a
seats.
backup list?
Backup
a waiting
list with standbys.
We usually have a waiting list.
Oh, good. See?
I do remember like the first year,
Yeah,
very
two-
first year I was on, we had a couple extra cars we had to take on one trip.
I think we had 2
And
buses,
then
as
we,
a matter of
maybe,
fact.
and then we tried a Saturday, and we hadn't done that before. I know we've tried some things.
Yeah.
The times are a little different. I know it makes a difference when we're in a drought or whenever they're filling it's
Yeah,
sticklerish,
well.
but
We're always going to be in a drought.
I think we're gonna be.
New normal.
We're in a
New
new
normal,
plan.
I think it's
Absolutely.
coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a drought, just the new norm is there's
Yeah.
not enough water.
Yeah.
That's all I really.
I'm moving to 45
Alright.
gallons a day.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Oh, good.
No
All right, well, there's
surprise
some
there. I think
Yeah.
you guys are a very creative team and
Yeah,
you do
got some-
amazing things for all.
ideas.
Got some good ideas there. We'll follow up on some of these and get back with you.
That would be fantastic.
Could you ask Rondi?
I sure will.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks.
ladies.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys. Wonderful. As usual.
Oh, good.
Can't wait to see what you come up with.
Stop by my office before you leave.
Okay,
I made
I gotta go see, get something to Diane too.
Would you like to introduce the next item, or do you want me to just jump in?
Why don't you just jump in? I haven't got it clear. I'm just gonna read what it says.
Okay, so it says employee benefits, and it's kind of a generic, where there's actually 3 things we want to talk about. So benefits are always a big thing to us for retaining and attracting
Mhm.
employees. And there's been a lot of conversation about the cost of those benefits, so, come on, yeah. So there's actually three things under benefits we want to talk about. One is that we did a medical benefits survey, and Rondi's gonna show you the results of that. I want to give the committee a little bit of an update on PERS, where we are with PERS
Uh-huh.
costs and how things are going forward. And then I have an issue I want to bring up with you about what I call augmented annual leave. Well, that's a little teaser. So when we get to it, I'll explain more in depth what that's about. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rhonda and she can talk about the benefits survey.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi, hi.
Lost your voice.
Excuse my voice. It'll come and go.
Thank you, ma'am.
You don't want one.
I'll just follow along.
Thank you. There you go. All right. Start with retirement benefits first. This survey is probably over 6 months old. So it was for fiscal year 17-18, and how it came to be was the presentations that were done at a board meeting by Water Authority and Metropolitan when they were kind of duking it out, and employee benefits also came up during that discussion. So that kind of prompted us to compare what we have to them, and then we also included a couple other agencies close to us, Encina, Alevenhain, and VID. Just as a point of reference, when we do our class and comp studies and we're looking at salaries, these aren't the only agencies. I wouldn't even say these aren't the same agencies that are included in the class and comp study. It's a much longer list, and it wouldn't include Metropolitan or Water Authority because we're not the same size. We don't compete for positions necessarily. This is just a sampling of a couple agencies. So in looking at retirement benefits, the first column is the benefit formula. It's probably the one you hear about the most, is who's got the best retirement benefits package for their employees. So the 3% at 60 is the highest formula. We have that, and so does VID. And then you'll see the other agencies fall not too far behind with 2.7 or 2.5. One of them, if I can put my glasses on, has a tier. Let me see who it is. It might be VID. When PEPRA came out, the pension reform law, one of the side effects from that change, which I don't think they anticipated, was the fact that we can't create new tiers for our employees, even if it's to save money. My guess is the unions were involved with some sneaky little language that they snuck into PEPRA, and so it's been kind of an interesting dilemma for agencies that say, well, we have this rich benefit, can we tier down to something better than PEPRA, but not as expensive as our formula? And the answer is no. At this point in time,
on the PEPRA, does that change the percentage in retirement to what?
It does, but it's only for new employees.
Right.
And that's the 2% at 62.
2 at 62.
Yeah.
Well, those people really took a hit.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor
Wow.
things. Yeah.
And I think that's my son-in-law. They're at 2% at 62.
Yeah. And one of the good things about our formula is that, besides current employees, is if we steal an employee from another agency who's already in the PERS system, they would come in under the 3% at 60 formula. So we're going to try to.
Because they were at under that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they were at 2, 3 at whatever, they'd come over it. Whatever they were, they could come over at the same rate.
If they were a PERS classic employee,
Yeah.
It's
they would
not
come in.
necessarily what they were, but just by the fact that they were in PERS and considered classic,
They
get
fell
our-
right into ours.
Oh, they would
They get whatever
what
this
our
agency's
is.
classic
Yeah,
formula
I see.
is.
Okay. Uh-huh.
But that does tie in with this whole tier conversation, because some agencies before PEPRA created a tier for those people to say, well, you're not going to be treated the same as PEPRA, but you're not going to be as good as our employees. They're going to be somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And we don't have the ability to do that at this point in
There was
time.
a point in time you had to have done that, and if you didn't do it by then,
Yeah.
forever barred.
Okay.
We can't change that
Right.
it correctly.
Right.
All right, and then my only curiosity is, and you've probably told us this already, but what percentage of our employees are classic at this point?
Uh-oh.
It's about
I had that number.
80%.
Yeah, it's pretty
yeah.
high.
Around 80%
I remember
Yeah.
you said
classic.
it somewhere, okay.
'Cause I want to say, how many are we at? 20 something is in PEPRA.
Yeah.
So the number's growing as we have more retirements and more
Yeah.
turnover.
So that's
The
actually
new
pretty
ones
good.
are
It's-
called PEPRA,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so you're classic or you're PEPRA?
yeah.
Okay, just running quick, right?
And if you want to be funny, you call them pepper people. So then the next column over is Social Security. Believe it or not all public agencies pay into Social Security. We are one that has a contract that we can't get out of because sometimes employees want to know, can we get out of Social Security? We have PERS, why do we need it? We're stuck. And so that column shows who has Social Security and what they consider either a full or modified benefit. So what modified means is that because we coordinate our benefits with Social Security, when it comes time for employees to get their check from PERS, there's a deduction made from that monthly amount for Social Security. Don't ask me why, because I can't explain it. Tom knows the history, but it's basically $133 per month that is carved off the top of their monthly
Of their
retirement.
payment.
Yeah.
And that's what they, when they receive their check,
Yeah.
that comes off.
Yeah,
And it
even
go-
though we are paying into Social Security
But
out of our
did
paychecks.
they get a Social Security check too?
They can, yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah,
we're paying into Social Security,
yes.
we're paying into PERS.
Yep,
They can collect from Social Security and they can collect from PERS.
yep.
But when they collect from PERS,
They're gonna
there's
shave a little bit off
$130.
the top. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
What's even weirder is VID is one of the few agencies that I can find that doesn't coordinate their 3% at 60 formula with Social Security. So that little scenario doesn't apply to their employees. I don't know how that affects when they actually apply for Social Security. I would think that somebody's going to hit them on the back end.
They hit you sooner or later,
Yeah.
I mean, they'll
Yeah.
hit you.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Okay, so the next column over, final average compensation. As you can see, most of the agencies here have 1 year final comp. And what that means is when employees are filing for retirement benefits, PERS is going to look at the highest year, 1 year. Usually it's the year before you retire, but you could have an employee who over their career had ups and downs, and maybe they decided they didn't want that level of responsibility anymore and they took a step back, and they can tell PERS, hey, don't use my last year because it's not the highest. Go back and look at the one that was the highest, and that's allowable under PERS. This is sometimes an optional benefit that agencies have to pay more money for their employees, but because we are a risk pool agency, it's required for us. So it's a good benefit for the employees, and we don't really have choice. So that's one thing to consider. A leave-and-hine is the only one that has the 3-year final average compensation. And I should back up. So PERS, when they're doing the calculation for retirement, they're looking at years of service, a benefit factor based on this formula, and your age, and then they come out with the percentage of final compensation. So in this case, they would look at the 1 year period instead of a 3-year period. So in theory, your number could be higher because they only require you to work at that higher level for 1 year.
So 3 at 60, if you're not, I don't know if you're familiar with how it works. If you
Yeah.
retire, if you're in a 3 at 60 and you're retired at 60 years old, you get 3% of your highest year's salary for every year you worked at that
Right.
agency.
Yes.
So if you worked there for 25 years, you get 75%,
Right.
3 times 25
Yeah.
of your highest 1 year as your retirement.
And if you're a PEPRA, can that raise at all, ever?
Nope.
It's, state has set that at 2,
Yeah.
and that's what it's gonna be.
Yeah. More than likely, those employees that work longer
Yeah,
just to try to get their max benefit
Sure.
And I
out
think
of it.
Pepper went even
Yeah.
further and said you can't come up with a supplemental program to give them, because what they're afraid of is people will get new employees at the Pepper, the lower Pepper, and then they're going to create another program
Yeah,
that brings
yeah.
them right back
Yeah,
up to
a
where they
richer
were
benefit.
before.
Yeah,
okay.
back in the day, that was how PARS made their money. If you've ever heard of PARS, they were like a supplemental plan that went out and made business off of public agencies. They're still in existence. I just don't know what they're doing now. So this next column, major optional benefits. Again, any optional benefits would drive the cost of the retirement plan up. Some of these are not truly optional. We're stuck with them. But you can see it's kind of all over the place as far as what agencies add. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about those things, but it's just provided there as a point of comparison because it affects the retirement rates. And then the next section over is all about rates. The two columns that say employee PERS at the top are what employees pay and if any percentage of that is picked up by the employer. As you know, with our employees, this year is coming in July, they'll pick up their final 2%, so they'll be paying their full share of the 8%. We're one of the stragglers in that regard, but we're getting there, and it's going to happen because it's in the MOU. And one weird thing to point out in this column is the Water Authority. You might remember from their presentation when they came to the board is that they're picking up part of the employees' share, but then on the other side, they're asking their employees to pay part of the employer's share. So it might seem kind of weird, like why would they do that? But what they're doing with the employees is they're reporting that percentage that the employer pays as kind of like reportable compensation, so it ups their retirement benefit. There's also some other nuances that I'll kind of gloss over, but by setting it up this way, they do have the ability to change it. So if those employees think that woohoo, we're locked in, they're paying our share, we're paying theirs, the agency can come back at some point and say no, we're going to start chipping away at what we're paying on your behalf. It would be subject to negotiations, but it just makes it a little confusing when you're trying to compare different agencies and they're kind of the only one that's set up that way at this point in time. And then the next column's over all about the employer cost. In the past, if you asked an agency what their PERS rate was, you'd hear a big number, 25 or so %. Now with the actuarial reports, they're breaking those down into separate numbers. So you really got to be careful when you're doing these surveys that you're looking at apples to apples. And even my counterpart over in Encina, we were just last week, I was like, Debbie, I don't think we got the right numbers here because your numbers are looking lower than everybody else, and I think there's a reason why. So just keep that in mind if you hear people throwing out their numbers. What you want is the total on the far right, because that folds in the unfunded liability. So in the actuarial reports now, they're showing dollar amounts for unfunded liability, but you can also read in the small print what that equates to a percentage of payroll. So for example, our total PERS rate, including our unfunded liability, is 21.898%. That's for fiscal year 17-18. It is going to jump up for next fiscal year, and so will everybody else's.
And we'll talk a little bit about that, a little more about that in the next presentation about PERS.
Okay.
So in that second to the far right column, that total, that does not include the employee's share,
No.
correct? This is just the district share of
Yeah.
normal cost and the district paying the unfunded. There's
Yeah.
also that 8% that the employee,
8 or 7, depending on the
depending
formula.
what your formula
Yeah.
is. So the total cost is closer to 30% of a person's salary that goes to PERS to cover their unfunded accrued liability and the day forward normal costs.
But the employee doesn't pick up that whole amount. They only do the 8%.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because I did forget to mention one other thing. Another reason to keep Social Security in mind is because the agencies that pay into it, that's less take-home money for employees. Yeah, it's a benefit. It'll be there,
Yeah.
but it does hit them in their pocketbook.
It's like 6.2% of the first $103,000 that you make. So if a person
And we
is making
can't
around
get out of that.
100,000, no.
Okay.
It's another one of those things. There was a point in time
Yep.
agencies had to opt in or out, and we
Yep.
did not opt out.
Yeah. What I found interesting in looking at the rates and the funded status, which is the last column on the right, is even though we have one of the richest benefit formulas, us and BID, the 3% at 60, our funded status is higher than the other agencies shown on this page. And we don't have some of the optional benefits that they have. So that means we're either doing something right, or maybe with all the actuarial valuations, our pool is a lower risk than the rest. And I think I mentioned that before, but because we're smaller, we're in a risk pool compared to like Metropolitan or Water Authority, who are much bigger. So we're hoping that keeps us down.
Are these four all in the risk pool?
Yep. So it
Glad
does
you-
help to control
I'm glad you
costs.
said that, because I was saying, well, funded status, it sounds like it's good, we're at the top.
It's a good
But I'm
thing.
gonna ask a question just to
Yeah.
be sure.
No,
I'm not
it's
reading
good.
it. Yeah.
It is
Okay.
going to change with what's going on with PERS, but it's going to affect everyone, not just us. Any questions about that page? It's probably
No.
the most convoluted one.
How's your voice holding up?
Let's hit it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
You need a break, let us know.
Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. Okay, medical benefits. This one is all over the place as far as how agencies determine how much they're going to contribute towards an employee's medical. You might have heard the term cafeteria plan.
Yep.
Encina is, the agency surveyed, Encina is really the only one that has a true cafeteria plan where they give employees a pot of money and say you figure out how you're going to spend it on these benefits. And, you know, some employees may say, well, I don't want dental and vision because I don't care about my eyes or my teeth, or, you know, I'm going to, you know, keep costs down by only, you know, covering myself and my kids will be on some other plan. So they're the only ones that have the traditional cafeteria plan. You can see who contracts with CalPERS and who doesn't. We'd like to think that the people that contract with CalPERS are probably paying more overall than the rest of us. I think JPIA does a fairly good job at keeping the rates down. There are a few agencies that actually go out on their own to contract benefits, like Water Authority, and Liebenheim has a Kaiser plan that they contract on their own. But it's a little riskier because you don't have the benefit of a larger pool.
Yep.
It's, you know, based on the utilization of your employees, and if you have older employees and you have a bunch of kids and a bunch of sick people, it's going to affect your rates.
Yeah, it looks like they're paying more.
Yeah, they are paying
Yeah.
more. And so those columns paid by employer are what they're paying on behalf of their employees, what's been negotiated if they have, you know, a union or association. You'll see for the column that says employee/dependents, some base it strictly on a percentage. We're going to pay 100% of, and sometimes it's very broad like that. Another time they tie it to a specific plan. For example, up to Kaiser Family. So they're trying to control the cost, but they're still paying 100%. So that means when rates go up from year to year, you know, they don't have as much control over, you know, what happens during the budget. So I think it's good that Vallecitos a while back came up with a base dollar amount and then folded in an escalator. Glenn and I have some ideas about that escalator potentially in the future, but it is better to have a flat dollar amount than a percentage that's tied to a rate that you don't know, you know, what's going to happen in the future. Water Authority is trying to get a little bit of a handle on theirs by saying we're going to cap it at Kaiser Family, and then anything above that is a 50% cost share, excuse me. But it still can be, you know, it's a percentage, so if their rates go up, then they're locked into that. So then if you look at the dollar amounts, I'd say, I wouldn't say we're at the very bottom, but we're in the middle of the pack compared to some of the other agencies. Water Authority's way up there, paying up to $1,560, depending on, you know, what the employee chooses. And then even VID and Liebenheim, their family benefits are much higher than ours. Generally speaking, we don't hear grumbling from our employees about our medical coverage. Most years, if they choose Kaiser, they're fully covered. It's very rare that they have to pay out of pocket. So I think you know, that's either, you know, the way that we have it set up and how JPIA is doing with their Kaiser rates. Not to belabor the point, but Kaiser is one of those plans that we can go a couple of years without seeing a rate increase, and then all of a sudden it'll take off. So that's one that I wouldn't want to tie to any sort of percentage because you just don't know what they're going to do. On the retiree medical side, otherwise known as OPEB, you can see there are still a few agencies that are still providing retiree medical to new hires. And those are the ones that contract with PERS, because PERS requires them to pay a minimum contribution for their new hires and offer them retiree medical when they retire. I thought that was interesting that they haven't, but I guess, you know, with CalPERS, they're trying to keep their costs down. And by having more people in and they're paying, it helps fund for those retirees. So the weird number in the next column over, it says $67 for
Yeah.
Encina. That's also a weird CalPERS thing. They're paying the bare minimum for their new hires for OPEB, and it's some crazy calculation by PERS called the unequal method that is supposedly going to ramp up over time. Even when I called Debbie, she's like, I don't know what that is. So we went round and round trying to research it, but it's weird. But eventually, their rates will climb up to meet the minimum required by PERS, because you can see Metropolitan, theirs is much higher, and they have PERS. It goes from roughly $400 to $800 per employee, and they're using what's called a vesting schedule with PERS. So PERS is interesting, that's for sure. At least with us, with Aqua JPIA, currently we're not providing OPEB anymore for our new hires, but even for our current employees that have the OPEB benefit, it's all within our control. They do have some, you know, rules that we have to follow. You can't just willy-nilly pick and choose who you're going to give retiree benefits to, but at least the dollar amounts are within our control. Let's
And
see.
while we're talking about OPEB, you've heard about the unfunded liability on the PERS
Right.
side. We had it like an unfunded liability on the OPEB side, and we're making payments. If you notice in the warrants list every month, we're making a $200,000 a month payment, so that at the end of this fiscal year, we'll have zeroed out our unfunded.
OPEB unfunded.
Yeah,
Which is good. We're
that's
making
great
progress.
news.
I
Yeah.
that's amazing.
So the
Yeah.
good thing about, and that'll be $1.8 million, I think it was, over the course of this year. That's money that we won't have to budget for OPEB next year that we could maybe divert towards PERS,
Yeah.
unfunded accrued liability, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing in here I want to point out, just because I think it's interesting, is VID. Most employers pay 100% dental and vision. That's why I didn't put it on here. But VID was proud to announce that they have their employees pay $23 a pay period for dental and vision, but they fully fund the medical. And I asked them why they did that, and they said, well, we had to show our board that the employees were paying part of their benefits. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, right?
$23.
23 bucks a pay period?
Yeah.
Well, that's rough. So they have they're a union shop over there. They have I want to say it's Teamsters. So
Wow.
generally speaking, they tend to pay more and have better benefits. Any questions on that page?
No, confusing enough.
Is this next page the same?
Did I staple yours wrong? Last one should be leave.
Oh, I've got.
You got two medicals?
Medical, yeah.
I'll just yank.
Are theirs?
No, I
Mine
was,
says
I was,
leave.
I was
Okay.
swapping out
Oh,
pages.
that's fine,
You
as
probably
long as
have
they,
an old one.
as long as they have it.
Do you need?
No, I'm good.
You don't get leave or
Yeah,
other
That's
benefits.
it, it's all canceled.
Just
Yeah.
forget.
Thank you.
We need you here all the time.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
got the one that was messed up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, you did that on purpose.
I did, see if you're paying attention. Last page is leave and other benefits, holidays, vacation, sick, disability insurance, and deferred comp. These benefits are a little more standard across the board. We survey them from year to year just to make sure, you know, that we're keeping up with the times, but it's not like they change much from one MOU to another.
What's the difference between the fixed and the float?
The fixed are the set holidays, the ones where an agency says we are closed on these days, Christmas,
Yeah, Christmas.
Thanksgiving, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
The floaters are use it or lose it. You get these couple extra days. You can take them whenever you want. You can tie them to a holiday or take them,
Take
you
your
know, middle
birthday
of
off
summer.
and-
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you don't use them, by the end of the year, they're gone.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. And also for an agency's perspective, the doors stay open. So
Yeah.
if your employees complain that they don't have as much holidays as somebody else, the better thing is to give them a floater than
Yeah.
shut the doors and,
Sure, yeah.
and incur those.
No, now I get it.
Let's see. So holidays, we're right in the running. We added one last MOU to bring us up a little bit. So nothing real exciting there. Agencies are getting a little creative. They're starting to give floating holidays for different things, like longevity. If you stay longer, we'll give you an extra floating holiday. Again, it's still use it or lose it, so
Yep.
it has there's some good reasons for doing that. On the vacation hours, that's not use it or lose it, it's a vested benefit. Starts accruing usually on day one. And once an employee leaves, they can cash that out if they haven't used it. They can't roll it over into PERS. It is taxed when they cash it out. But for employees that have been here a long time, they can creep up to that max or the cap fairly quickly. So looking at this column that says accrue /year, the 80 is showing how many hours of vacation a new hire gets once they accrue that first year. They don't get it on day one. They have to accrue it. And then what the maximum is.
Per year or per?
So that breaks out into usually 5-year increments.
Okay.
So usually, it depends on the agency, but usually it's years 1 through 5. You can have a max of 160. So they're going to have to use some of that leave before they can continue to accrue.
Or they lose it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or they just stop. They don't
They stop
lose it.
accruing.
They just stop accruing.
Oh, yeah.
They keep what
okay.
they have, but they can't
Yeah.
get any more.
Okay.
And then the sorry, I probably worded that the wrong way. That's the cap, not the max. The max is as you continue in your career and you get more years of service, you get more, I want to call them weeks, but they're hours of vacation per year. So you start out with 2 weeks and then eventually you ramp up. For us, it's 176 hours of vacation leave.
Then what is the cap at 240?
The cap is what I was talking about. Year to year, if I don't use it and I just keep accruing and accruing and accruing, once I hit that cap, I can't accrue anymore.
So 240 is the max.
Yeah,
That's the number of vacation hours you
On the books.
on the books. Yeah, no matter how many years you've been here, that's it. You can see some of the caps are higher. And what's interesting about a Levenheinz cap is they base it on years of service. And that's kind of an interesting way of doing it. So that way, when you're further along, you're not held to that same cap as everybody else. Maybe you're out someone who likes to take vacation, or I don't know why, but
So before are you ready to go into sick?
yeah.
Maybe I'll hit a pause button here for a second. So when I introduced this item, I gave that little teaser about, and I called it the augmented annual leave. This may be a good time since we're talking about vacation. So one thing we do here at Vallecitos, if somebody comes over here to join us, we treat them as kind of a new employee. They're going to start with 80 hours. It doesn't matter if they're a fresh graduate from college or a 25-year veteran that's served somewhere else. I think that's a big burden. It's a big barrier for people to join our organization. So we're in the middle of recruitment for a finance manager right
Yeah.
now. We'd like to get a seasoned veteran, somebody who's really done
Absolutely.
it. So that's probably somebody that's been 20 years in the industry. They may be working at an agency where they're getting 4 to 5 weeks of vacation a year, and we're asking them to join us, and we'll give you 2 weeks of
Yeah.
vacation a year. So I want to find some way that we would be able to entice people, if needed, if it's a competitive job market and you really need to lure these people over, or if so it's either hard to attract or for whatever
Specialty,
reason.
something.
So I'm contemplating bringing an item in front of the board to ask to give the general manager the authority, depending on certain circumstances, to allow us to give more than just 2 weeks under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Whether it's more vacation accrual, or we can call it something like executive leave, or I don't know if you want to just do more floating holidays, something that would basically bring them in as they come in the door. They don't really care what they call it.
They
Give me
just-
more leave time.
Yeah.
If we think we need to attract them in. Now, clearly, if it's somebody just coming out of college, it's their first job, I'm not going to offer more
Right,
than
right.
you get 2 weeks.
Right.
But if I get somebody to apply for the finance manager and says,
Yeah, or the IT person.
I want to come work
yeah.
for you, Glenn. I love the salary, but I can't justify going
Yeah.
on to 2 weeks of vacation.
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to say, in that case, let's give them 3 additional weeks if that's what it takes to
Yeah.
close the deal. So, and I just wanted to get your guys' read on something like that.
I think we have to be able to maintain looking for the right employees. And if that would, if I was the employee and I went, gee, I'd like your place, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna drop 3 weeks of accrued vacation or a vacation at all, Let's see, 40, 16, well, then that's, that's 18, that's $5,400. So that's a chunk of change that I'm gonna
Yeah.
drop on that coming over.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
You know, and a lot of studies show that people value time off as much as they value
Yep.
the salary, the higher salary, or
Mhm.
the better, more responsibility that a position may offer.
yeah,
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I feel what makes this district special is our staff,
Yeah.
period.
exactly.
And I really don't think that that's where you cut funding. And you get what you pay to get
Yeah.
what we want. And I
Yeah.
feel that, I don't know where the whole board's at, but I think our finance director is critical. I think we've done an amazing job as a district through the years and through all the boards. Somebody's done a great job with this district and keeping it
Yeah.
on track in spite of all kinds of, opportunities to lose it.
Yeah,
So I think that's a great idea. I think it's so important, and I agree with you on the IT thing too. I'm hoping we will get an IT specialist down the road.
Yeah, and we're
Nobody's
out.
helping more than me.
Yeah.
Oh, I
yeah.
bet.
So, yeah, we
I
opened that
bet.
recruitment Thursday.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
last
I
Thursday,
just-
so it's out on the street right now.
You know,
good.
what a critical thing in today's world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
Sure.
tell you, there's people there that are looking on a website as we speak. They say, "Wow, this sounds like a great job, but 2 weeks of vacation, I just can't do it. I
Yeah,
can't move backwards."
exactly.
So
No,
I'd
I
like to
agree.
get that barrier out of the way.
I
Yeah.
think that's
So-
Yep.
critical.
Okay,
Mhm.
just to let you know, I talked with Tom Scaglione. He serves on the Aqua board. Aqua recently did something, and I have their language right here, and it basically just says authorize the general manager to, enhance their. They do it with vacation accrual, but it says for hard to recruit and or senior level positions. So that's
Yep.
how they word it. It's
Sure.
vague enough that almost whatever level you think you need to, but you're not going to give it to everybody in every
Yeah.
case.
And
Yes.
it's at the discretion of management, of
Yeah,
the GM.
of the GM. And really, in a way, you could say there's really no money because we're not paying the people more. We're just allowing them to take more time
Yeah.
off the job. So it's not hard dollars out. But there is some
And they don't
potential.
get to do less on their job, they just have to do more before they go.
Well, that's the
I mean,
thing. You
that's
got to
how it
work
works,
harder
right?
while you're here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or when you come back.
Okay. Well, thanks for the
Always.
feedback. That's
Yeah.
helpful.
No,
Exactly.
brilliant.
And the only caveat from HR is we still have to run it by the association.
Right.
Because even though it's a gimme, they might say, well, I don't want that, I want that. Or
Yeah.
can you make it broad enough to where
Yeah.
I get to? So,
Yeah, well,
but anytime you're giving something, it's
but
a good
this is
thing.
why we're policymakers and you get the big bucks for working through the
Yeah.
kinks, right?
Yeah.
So.
Or the little bucks, either way.
Given the timing of these 2 recruitments, the finance manager and the IT, I may try to work with Rondi and put something
Yeah.
together real quickly so it shows up on the agenda next week.
Yep.
And I won't be here.
And you won't be here, but that means we'd also have to meet and confer with the employees in that time. Otherwise, we have to wait till March 7th.
Seventh.
I'm gonna say
Yeah.
March 7th.
Yeah, but we hope to have
And it
that.
may be okay because I think our interviews for the
We're not till the first week of March.
yeah. So
For IT.
but some people, it may be too late. I think the first reading of the recruitment closes
Mhm.
Thursday, so
Yeah.
we can't do anything in time for that. So
Yeah. But most people won't not apply. They'll wait till they
Yeah.
get further along in the process and then say, is there wiggle room
yeah,
here?
then they'll start
there?
negotiating
Yeah.
if they're selected. So and that's when I'd like it to be. I'd like to have that tool in my tool belt.
Yep.
When it comes
Mr.
to
President, are you gonna have 3 votes to make it happen, if I'm not here?
I think so.
that. Will you be here for this March 7th?
I'll be here on the 7th,
Okay.
but I'll be
I
gone.
think March 7th.
I
would
thought
work.
about calling in from Florence, but I really
You're
don't
not
want
gonna?
to.
You post it outside here?
No, I was
Why
thinking I
not?
could
Because
write.
that would tell me how I could do it. I'm in
Yeah.
Tuscany.
No, you're gonna be in Tuscany?
Yeah.
When are you going?
End of May.
In the May.
And I'm going in July.
Yeah.
Okay,
So.
well,
Jeez,
Well, then you
it's a
can
place
call
to
it.
go
Yeah.
this
Once
year.
once you
Yeah.
lead the path, then
Yeah.
we just follow in your
Is
footsteps.
that what I wanna do while I'm there?
God,
No.
please say no.
Not at
Yeah,
all.
it's-
But if it would help, I'd be happy to write a letter saying I support the concept, having read the agenda, and you can read it as a record.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, let me know what will you do.
All right.
I feel our board will make good policy decisions, but.
I think so.
Yep.
Okay, I'll go through this other stuff fairly quickly because it's not as exciting. But sick leave, you can see that's pretty standard. The only thing I'll point out is for the cap on sick leave, we're one of the few agencies that doesn't have a cap on our sick leave, and because sick leave can be converted into service credit and PERS doesn't put a cap on it, which is interesting. That's something we might want to consider in the future, just to bring us up to par with other agencies.
Yeah,
But-
anytime you change something like that, you have to think about, does it affect current employees or is it just to affect new employees? So we have an employee here that has over 2,000 hours
Yeah.
of sick leave accrued, which will
Ronnie.
get converted. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's not her. Let's just say it's not
definitely
her.
not me.
So that'll get converted to service credit. So it'll almost be like that person worked over a year more than they actually have.
Yeah,
So, and I think that's a little unreasonable. We probably need to cap it, but that doesn't mean that that individual should be penalized because we
Right.
changed the rules after the fact. But new people coming into the door, we should probably have a cap.
Disability insurance, the only thing to know there is that some people use state SDI and some agencies don't. It is something that you can get out of and offer your own benefit, but we have it on our radar, but I wouldn't say it's something we're considering at this point in time. Long-term disability, across the board, everyone offers it, and that's not through the state. That's your own plan, and we shop that one out every chance we get. And this year our contract is up for renewal, and we'll be shopping around again.
okay.
Deferred comp, I'd like to think this is one of the latest revelations and negotiations. It looks like this is happening more and more, and it used to be only a couple agencies offered it, and now you can see everyone's offering it, and they are
What
changing
does
it.
that actually mean?
You want to do it and save my voice?
Yeah, so deferred compensation is I don't know if you ever heard the term 457 plan. It's an IRS code section. So employees can take a portion of their salary and put it into a 457 plan. And that portion that you put in there is not subject to state, to income tax, to federal income tax. You'll get taxed on it when you pull it out when you're in retirement.
Uh-huh,
So what this is the district will match however much money an employee puts in, the district will match that on an annual basis up to $1,000. So if an employee puts in $10,000 a year, the district's only putting in $1,000. If an employee only puts in $800, the district will only put in $800. They won't,
Right.
they
Do
won't
you
go
remember
above.
I remember in the last discussion, we were gonna keep it low and we went with 1,000. And this is one of those things, you only match it if people are willing to put their money in.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
generous way to say, we're here for you if you need us,
Yeah.
but they have to make an effort
yeah,
to get
right,
it.
right, okay.
I think we have 80 something, it's not all 180
It's not,
employees. It's about
no.
85, I think, that actually participate in it.
Really?
We budget
But
from
I
a
don't think
budgetary,
I don't know if they're all even hitting their max.
I don't know.
I was gonna say, you have to budget for the max.
From a budget, we put in $108,000 in the budget, assuming all 108 employees
Right.
go at least $1,000.
Yeah.
We don't spend it all,
But when you think about it, I know 108's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money.
not with our big
No.
budget.
Not
No.
with a big
30.
budget,
Yeah.
so I have.
And I think it's a
hope we
great-
won't lower it,
It's a great tool to help encourage employees to save for
Yes.
themselves,
Mhm.
right?
to supplement PERS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a good enticement.
Yeah.
Teach a
All right.
man to fish and don't give him.
Okay, that's all I
You
have.
fish?
Any
Okay.
I'll better
questions
teach you
for me?
Nope,
No.
Ron, can you summarize this to say where are we? Some of the concerns I've heard from other board members is are we leading the pack? Are we trailing the pack? So, my opinion is we seem to be
We're in the
pack,
middle of that, yeah.
which
Yeah.
is it's a safe place to be.
yep, I think, so. I mean, just from what I've seen here, we're not outrageous and we're not being too
Yeah.
stingy.
You know, you can always pick and choose and say, well, we're too high here, but well, look at the other column, we're low here. So
Yeah.
it kind of balances out. I would
No,
say.
I would say we're in the middle and in a very good place. And to me, what's most important is that we're aware of our limits, that we're willing to stretch to keep our
yeah,
asset value.
and,
Right.
and we're going through this now because we're talking with the employees.
MOU
Is that-
next year.
Yeah, so the current MOU expires June 30th of
Yep.
2019, next year. So we have about a little less than a year and a half, which is good, but we've been talking about benefits and the MOU ever since I started work here, I think.
Yeah.
Good.
Because we're kind of locked right now. The rules are locked. You could
Right.
open it up, but I don't suggest doing that.
No.
So everything we're doing would take place July 1, 2019. That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
So from a budgetary perspective and all that.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so we have some time and something
And then
in
we
the,
could still do a 3-year extension if necessary, is that true?
I don't know if it's be an extension or a new MOU. I'll
What,
look
I
to,
forget,
I'll look to
isn't
you.
there something, last time we had an MOU extension or something?
Well,
That's when we
I think
didn't have the
last-
MOU.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the last
that's
one
what
was
happened.
because
Oh.
we didn't have an agreement,
Yeah.
and it was imposed,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
we had to.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. Oh, right, okay.
But some agencies do make a conscious decision not to go back to the table. Some say,
Oh.
hey, you know, we're not in a good place and you're not in a good place, so how about we just extend what we have? But that would be different.
Yeah.
No, no, no.
I think we want to do that.
And just out of curiosity, and this probably should be brought up at the board meetings anyway, for the whole board, but now that we've become a shop,
Agency shop.
Agency shop
an agency shop, when did that go, or has it gone into effect? And has it made any difference just at this point in
You
anything?
probably, well, there's some disgruntled
Yeah, there's some
individuals that kind of got
unhappy people.
forced to be into the association when they wouldn't otherwise have wanted to be.
Yeah.
So they're having to
They're not
pay
picketing,
money
they're not
to a charity
protesting,
or
but-
something, with it,
And
or
those are the
whatever.
ones that, although they don't pay into the association, they have to give it to a nonprofit?
Well,
Go ahead.
they attempted to do that, and then in looking closer at the rules, because they didn't have a religious reason, they have to pay the agency shop fee. They can't just have their money go to a
Boys and
charity.
Girls Club.
Society or something like that?
Yeah, they can't.
Really?
They have to have a religious reason.
No.
Huh.
It's not our
They
fault,
like
they had
dogs.
an attorney helping them,
Not our fault at all. You know, they
But-
voted for it,
but
so.
once again, not knowing what to ask,
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
caught.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
that's,
sorry to
that-
hear of it,
that
kind
fine
of
print.
disgruntled after they went to the trouble.
Yeah.
of- I don't personally have feelings about, I'm not excited about union, but the agency shop, I think it was really, it's how able are we, how viable is our dialogue, and where is the trust levels,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So, but that makes me very disheartened to find there's people who are unhappy with the majority choice and then find out they didn't
They
have
don't
an
really have an
attorney that really should have helped
Yeah.
them. I feel bad about that.
Yeah, if they got bad advice, that's
Or
unfortunate.
no advice.
It wasn't from us. You're right. It
Right,
could've
I'm
been
just
no
saying, someone
advice.
just reads it and
Yeah.
does that mean I give to a charity? And they say yes, and then, the attorney needs to speak up and say, there's caveats.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And it was a very delicate balancing act for us, because we were advised by council to stay out of it. It's an employee thing. They want it. They voted for it. We can't give them advice.
yeah,
We can't, otherwise it puts us in that position where we look like we're telling them,
what to
Yeah.
do.
it did, and part of, I know the board had problems with if the GM was too involved or helping them, which I think Dennis did give them some good advice. But if we're
Yeah,
gonna
well.
withdraw that opportunity and then they choose to do that, but is that affecting us as a unit or just them in their personal lives?
I think it's just some upset
Some individuals,
individuals,
yeah.
but it may have, my opinion, there may be a ripple. You may see that particular group, because they're unhappy, try to look for other things.
Yeah,
Okay, well, if you can't do this, then let's try to do something else.
Yeah.
And then, I'm not an employee, but so what do they pay, what do you pay to be an agency
$6
shop?
now.
Pay
$6 a pay period?
$6?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's $3 a week.
But you know what, that's, $6 is a lot of money if you don't have money. I wouldn't leave it walking on the sidewalk, I wouldn't walk past it.
Are we paying anybody less than
$6.
$25 an hour in our agency?
Paying less than what?
$25 an hour?
For
I
what?
don't know what
Anyone
it
in
was.
our agency, our organization?
No.
No.
I think for some people it's the principle though.
Yeah, no,
That's
that
my-
for sure, but
Principal, I was
that's why I
thinking more
say,
than the
I
money.
don't- in our agency, I don't think that $6 is gonna do anything.
Okay, any more questions for Rodney?
No?
You can go rest your voice. if you want.
Yeah.
Ann, is there a clicker for that so I could advance it?
No, but
Okay.
I can just, you can do it.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah.
Or if you want a keyboard, you can have a keyboard.
No, it's maybe easier if I do it. You see? Thanks,
Thank
Rodney.
you, take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Vitamin C, gargle with vitamin C.
Okay, so PERS PERS is a big cost. In fact, interestingly enough, today PERS costs aren't as much as our medical insurance are, so they're actually a bigger number. But over time, they're rising, and they will surpass that. So I wanted to make sure that the board members started to get up to speed on the PERS issues. We did do a version of this to the finance committee, so they've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So after today, the only one who will not have seen it is Craig.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, we'll probably bring it in front of the board.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly when that will be. My purpose today is not to advocate for a solution, it's just to educate, to get
Yep.
everybody to understand where we're at.
Okay.
But I will try to put numbers into perspective near the end of it. Because sometimes I find the numbers are so big that it's hard for people to put the numbers into perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard people from other agencies say that, the PERS costs are going to drive our agency into bankruptcy. We're going to have to fire half of our employees. And you'll see when I try to put it into perspective, that's not going to happen to us. I think we're okay. So Ronnie talked a little bit about Classic and Pepper employees. Right. I want to talk a little bit about unfunded accrued liability, explain what it is, talk about normal costs, talk about where the funding comes from, and right at the end I'll talk a little bit about a legal challenge that's working its way through the state Supreme Court. So CalPERS, or PERS we'll just call it, is this big organization that affects thousands of agencies and hundreds of thousands of employees. And their primary purpose is to give payments to retirees.
Yep.
So they take money in so that they can give money out at the appropriate time. And their funding comes from investment earnings. So they collect money every week in the paychecks. They get money, but they don't necessarily pay it out right away because the people that they collected it for haven't retired yet. So they take that and they invest it. They also get money from employer, so the district in this case makes contributions and the employees make contributions. So those three funding sources on the left allow PERS to make the payments out on the right-hand side. So just those are the three funding sources. The last sub-bullet, you'll see that EPMC, Employer Paid Member Contribution, that's when the employer picks up a portion of the employee's 8%. Randy said we're about to go where the employees will pick up the full 8%.
Yep.
So right now the district is picking up 2 of the 8. That's called an Employer Paid Member Contribution, and that's going away as of July 1. So if you look at the funding sources, if you look back in 2015, for every dollar that PERS spent on retirement benefits, about 65 cents of that dollar came from their investments. So the vast majority was from their investments. 22% was by the employers, and then 13% was by the employees. And if you come to 2017, the employee share is still 13 cents of that dollar, but you can see the investment earnings are down. They're only getting 61 cents of every dollar, and the employers have picked up that extra, that 4 cents. So that's kind of what you're seeing, is that's that hue and cry that, the cost to the agencies are really going up. So we've gone from 22 to 26 cents. So that's a pretty, percentage-wise, that's a big increase. That's 4 cents on 20 cents. It's almost a 20% increase or shift to the district. So what is the unfunded accrued liability? This is the PERS definition, but basically what it's saying is if we stop today and if we disbanded the shop and nobody worked here anymore, we still owe our employees, either the ones that are already retired or the ones that are working here today, for the time they've already worked. Yeah. And that's what the unfunded accrued liability. Okay. Basically what it says is, how much should you have put aside so that you can pay these people in their retirement? And it's all for past service credit. It's not for future costs, it's all for past credit. And we'll talk about the future costs in a second. So this is kind of just a silly schematic, but what it's trying to show is there's actually 2 numbers that PERS looks at. The one on the far left, they do what's called an actuarial report. It looks at your number of employees, what do you pay them, what retirement plan are you on, and it basically says for the employees that you have currently and the time they've already spent in the system, and for your retirees, here's how much money you should have in that banking account. That's what that left bar is. The middle bar, that's called market value, that's how much money you actually have in your bank account for PERS costs at any one time. And the difference is the shortfall. And the shortfall is what's called the unfunded accrued liability. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says, and our number is about $17.2 million right now, if somebody says, what's your unfunded accrued liability, that means you're short by $17.2 million over what you should have to ensure that you've put enough money aside for the past service of all your employees. Now, if you want to put numbers to that, that's what this one does. This looks at 5 fiscal years, fiscal year 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. We don't, these numbers come from PERS. We don't have fiscal year 17 data yet because the PERS actuarial report for 17 is not yet available. It'll be available in about August. So that we will update this in August. So for each of those 5 years, I tried to put the left bar, how much you should have, the pink bar, how much you do have, and the difference. So the green bar is just the difference between the kind of purplish bar and the black bar. So just to point out some interesting things, if you look at the black bars and focus on those, you see they go up every year.
Yeah.
That's okay. They're supposed to, because your employees are spending more time in the system, so you should be having more money set aside. So if you look back in fiscal year 12, we should have had about $49 million. And then in 13, it should have been 52.7, then 59.2. And again, these are from their actuarial reports. So the purplish bar, the fuchsia color there, it started at 36.9, and then it went up, okay, it went up to 41.8, and then it went up again, it did really well at 49, but then you can see it stalled. It hasn't increased in fiscal year 15 or 16, it stayed relatively flat. So the fact that the black bar is going up and the pinkish bar is not, it's causing that unfunded accrued liability to grow. So all the charts that follow this, we're not going to look at the black bar, we're not going to look at the fuchsia bar, we're just going to look at the unfunded accrued liability, kind of the green bar. And that's what you see here. These are the same numbers that you saw on the previous slide for the green bars. But if you went back to 2012, we had, a high number is bad.
Yeah.
You'd like it to be 0, ideally. So if you went back to 2012, our unfunded accrued liability was a little over about $12.5 million. And in 13, it actually came down to about 11, so that was good. In 14, it came down to under 10, so things were going well, and we'll talk about why in a second. And then 15, it jumped up to about 12.5, all the way back where it was in 2012. And then the last actuarial report in 2016, that's that number of about $17.2 million that I mentioned, and we don't have the 17 number yet. So, and again, this unfunded accrued liability, it varies on a lot of factors. How many employees? If you have less employees, you have less of an unfunded accrued liability. Depends on the salaries you pay those people. The type of plan, we're at 3 at 60, that's a pretty expensive plan. Lifespan assumptions, that's a biggie. When an actuary does his report, one of the things he figures out is how long is somebody going to live after they retire. They're about to increase their lifespan assumptions. So what that's going to mean is the unfunded accrued liability will go up because of that. They look at how much payments you've made in the past, so that purplish bar, that pinkish purplish bar, and the investment return. And that's the single biggest contributing factor, is that investment return. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So if you remember this chart from previous, we're going to focus on these investment earnings right here. So this is a table that comes from CalPERS. It was actually compiled by Joe Spence. He works for the Encino Wastewater Authority, but I borrowed this from him with his permission. And this is looking at the CalPERS investment returns. This is not the overall stock market returns. This is what CalPERS stock market returns were. So last year was a pretty good year, 11.2% return. 16 was dismal, 0.6% return. 15, 2.4%. 14 was a really good year, and 13 was a pretty good year. But if you start looking at averages, 3, 5, 10-year averages, even the 20-year average, they're not great. Since its inception, in its current form, it's about 8.43%. CalPERS' assumption of what they think they'll get is 7.5%. It used to be 7.75%, but they just lowered that last year by 1/4%.
They need to lower the whole point.
Well, over the next 3 years, they're going to lower it to 7%. So that's the CalPERS plan. Is they know they've been a little high to market on their assumed rate, and when they do their budget, they use their assumption and they figure one of those bars will be a certain amount of dollars, and they allocate how much has to come from the other two sources. And when they're off, they have to increase the amount that they charge to the others.
Right.
So they're being realistic, and that's good. So it'll bring that 7.5% assumed rate of return down to 7 over a 3-year period. And by the way, they call that assumed rate of return. That's what they call their discount rate. So if you ever hear about the CalPERS discount rate, that's their assumed rate of return on the market. So if you took those numbers that I just showed you and plotted it, superimposed it on the unfunded accrued liability, back in 2012, our unfunded accrued liability was 12.5 million, and then in 13 we had a 13.2% return on the investment, and that served to drive that unfunded accrued liability down. You go into 14, another great year in the stock market, 18.4%. It further drove it down. You go to 2015 with that 2.4% return. They underperformed, and they didn't bring as much money on that middle arrow on the left side of that graph. So the unfunded accrued liability went up, and then 2016 hit, and just it was dismal. That 0.6% return drove it up again. So with 2017, although we don't have the actuarial report yet, we do know what their rate of return was. So since it was 11.2%, it was pretty good. I think what's going to happen is the unfunded accrued liability may actually come down a little bit, but at the same time they're adjusting the lifespan assumptions, so that may serve to drive it up. So where that UAL will fall in 2017, I'm not sure, but one thing you can say with certainty is when the stock market goes up, your UAL gets driven down, and when you have bad stock market years, your UAL goes up pretty quickly.
So just on, you're guessing it's gonna be right around the 17 still.
I'm hoping it'll actually come down a little bit.
Right, but you're saying it could go with the lifespan, so.
Yeah, so it should be
maybe
about even, maybe
that-
come down $1 million or $2 million.
Okay, that's interesting.
So just to remind you of this chart again, the upper right. So if you looked at the black bar and the purplish bar, and you did a ratio of how much of the black bar is the purple bar, how well funded are we? That's what we tried to show here. So again, the green bars are what you saw in the last slides before. That's in millions. The other graph you see superimposed is the percent funded. So how well funded are you? How big is your actual market value compared to your actuarial needs? So back in 2012, we were about 74.5% funded. And then when the UAL came down, our actual funded ratio went up. We were about 80% funded. 2014, great, 83.5% funded because the stock market was really helping us out. But in the last 2 years, with the stock market going down, we've seen our funded ratio go down. Rondi touched on this a little bit. We're actually good to market. If you look at all the PERS agencies, we're in the upper tier. We're well funded, but we're still not at 100%. Jim, you know this, we're one of the 6 member agencies of the Encina Wastewater Authority. We are tied with Leucadia for being the 2 best funded of those 6. So a microcosm, if you look at those 6 agencies, we're doing well compared to our peers. So that's good.
But over these last couple of years, the stock market has been doing really well. So
what you see is a delayed reaction. So 2017, the market did well. We don't know our funded ratio yet.
Oh.
We don't know our unfunded accrued liability. We have to wait until August when PERS releases their actuarial reports. So we're about a year and a half behind.
We do know the 11.2%.
We know that. So we know that's going to serve to, at a minimum, keep it from going up. It should flatten it, and it hopefully will bring it down a little bit. But you can see, when we had those, when you had like a 13, if you look in the 2013 bar, we had a 13.2% return, and it drove from 2012 down. It made that UAL go down between 2012 and 2013 because of that 13.2%. So I'm hopeful the 11.2% we saw in 17 will have a similar effect, and it'll actually drive the UAL down. But there may be other factors like the lifespan assumptions and others that may actually keep it flat. I hope it doesn't go up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's so what do we do about it? So we know we have this outstanding liability. PERS has come to the rescue, and they said, hey, we'll offer you a payment plan. A couple of years ago, there's a rule called GASB 68,
Yep.
Government Accounting Standards Board or something like that. And what GASB 68 said is that agencies have to put all of their liabilities on their balance sheet. And 68 said, and you also have to do it for your PERS liability. So that was the first time, only a couple of years ago, that agencies had to start disclosing their unfunded obligation, or UAL. So, and PERS says, okay, now that you have it on the books, you have to do something about it. So PERS has come up with payment plans, and it does require annual payments with interest over a specified period of time. It's kind of like a home mortgage loan. It's not a fixed interest rate though. And they are offering 30-year plans, 20-year plans, and 15-year plans. Now that doesn't mean an agency can't come up with their own plan, and that's something I'm not going to talk about it today, but we'll probably need to talk about it in the future. Do we want to just write a check for our $17.2 million? Does that make sense? What are the pros and cons of that? So this 30 or 20 or 15-year plan, we're paying, the interest rate they charge us is their discount rate. So we're going to be paying about 7 to 7.5%. That's a high number.
That's
Yeah.
very high.
We have about $68 million, I think, in our reserves. Do we want to take some or all enough to pay that off and then reimburse that account? And we can, that money that's in those reserves is only making about 1.25% to 1.5%.
Right.
Yeah,
So why would
exactly.
we sit on money that's making 1.25%
And
and
pay-
pay a
yeah.
debt that's 7 to 7.5%?
Exactly.
So that's something that we'll think about. That we're not going to talk about it today.
Mhm.
So, assuming this chart is assuming a 30-year payment schedule. So let's say that we said, okay, PERS, we're going to take you up on your deal. We're going to pay this UAL off over 30 years at your discount rate. This is what just the unfunded accrued liability payments are. And remember,
Today.
these are looking backward costs. These are the costs for time already. It's like a bad debt. You've already incurred it.
Mhm.
So if you look in the 17-18, that's where we are today. That's the fiscal year we're in today, 17-18. The unfunded accrued liability payment that we will make to PERS this year is about $750,000. If you fast forward 7 years, and this obviously the payments go out for 30 years, but I just took it out for 7 years just to make it manageable. Those payments will go from $750,000 per year to a little over $2 million per year.
I'm sorry, like you said, so why do they go up each year?
Because they don't have a level, it's not like a home mortgage where you're paying
Oh,
X
the
percent.
interest is
They do-
tagging along.
They do some funky, it'd be like a variable rate interest
Right, I
rate.
got it.
And with balloon payments, they do all sorts of clever,
Yes.
creative. I'd like to see a nice flat, your payment is this
You
much.
wanna know what it is. to
I'm a
get it.
conservative guy. When I get a home
I know.
loan, it's a
Yeah.
30-year
Well,
fixed.
we had
right?
an equity line that sat, it was just really great, it was like a 2% forever, and
Yeah.
it just recently timed out. And every single month it's gone up.
Yeah.
It's on I was like, ooh, I think we'll pay that much left, we're gonna pay
So
it
the
off.
reason PERS did that is they knew it was going to be a shock to the agencies, and if they just all of a sudden make you start your equal monthly installments, it would have really hurt agencies. So they kind of ramped it in slowly. But even though they may only be charging you a couple of % in the first year, they're actually keeping track of that 7%. So they'll add 7% onto what you should be paying, and then maybe only make a small payment. So your principal is actually going up for the first couple of years.
Oh, boy.
So you may have started owing them
yeah,
17.2, but then it's going to be 18, 19 before it starts coming down.
Then they had the PMI or something.
It's, yeah, all those things. So you can see these are real numbers. So it's not like just a couple bucks here and there. So this year we budgeted for $750,000. Next year we're going to be budgeting for almost $1 million. So just in that one line item in our budget, it's about an extra $250,000. So
And
don't
do you
get
know,
too painful there, Jim. We'll
You probably
solve
don't
these
know. I'm
problems.
sure you need the finance wizards in here, but for that 750 that we paid in this
Yep.
17-18 year, what percentage of it is actual principal pay down? None, because the principal's still going up?
I don't know the answer to that specific question because I don't have the
That's-
payment schedule.
That makes it, I mean, those are important things, isn't it? When
It
we
is.
decide if we want to pay it off.
Yeah.
Man, that's a
And, I,
7%.
and my recommendation would be that we have a specific board workshop to
Oh, I
talk
think
about
it's
PERS.
excellent.
Nothing else on the agenda. Let's
Because-
talk about PERS.
Yes.
You would think, because in our last board meeting, we were discussing the outside investment council or
Right,
whatever, and we weren't getting anywhere near 7% return on our money.
Yeah. No,
On any of our-
nowhere near it.
Yeah,
No, we've been lucky that we've always
Three.
we've been, well, no, I think ours has been a little like 1.7 or
It's
something.
between 1.25 and 1.5.
And I've
Yeah.
always thought, well, they're still above the 1. That makes us better than, because there's some, you know, that are
pitch
20.
pennies and make that. I mean,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
maybe that.
Well, we're very limited. There's rules in place, and if you remember any of that conversation, we can't go out and invest in Google. We can't invest in real estate. There's very limited portfolio of investments for a municipal agency.
Really.
PERS doesn't have the same rules. PERS can go out and invest in just
Yeah,
about
'cause
anything
that's
they
the
want.
reason they're there.
Yeah, so that's why they can chase a number like 7 to 7.5%, because in good years they think they'll meet that. We will never
And they
meet
have a
that.
big
Well,
pool
would it
of
be,
money.
would it be smart for us to pay more than the 17?
Well, and I don't know the answer to all those things.
No.
I quite honestly, I think we may need to bring in an expert from the outside
Yeah.
to help
Yeah.
guide us. If not making recommendations, at least analyze several different alternatives and give us some pros and cons to think
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
You know, one of the risks of taking money from the reserves and putting it to PERS is that you don't have it in the reserves, and if something happens and you need to go rebuild an ocean outfall, now you don't have enough money in your reserves.
Yeah,
But you can borrow money for the project at cheaper than the
Right.
7.5%.
Absolutely.
7%. So those are the things
Yeah,
that we
we
need a
need
high
to
level
check out.
financial
Yeah,
analysis.
yeah.
And I don't want to get too much into the solutions because again, I'm here to educate, not advocate.
Yeah.
But I think there's ways that we can address this that are better than this. This
Yeah.
is, in my opinion, this is almost a worst case. This is, I wouldn't say it's a do nothing.
Oh, yeah.
We are doing something. We're
Yeah.
paying it,
Sorry.
but we're doing
Yeah.
the bare minimum that
Yeah, no,
CalPERS.
and-
And I should say this. This district has done everything that PERS has asked. We haven't reneged on payments. We
Yeah.
haven't been late in our payments. We're paying, so we're a member in good standing. They just probably haven't been asking for us to pay as
Yeah.
much as they should have done. So it's no fault of us. And I don't know that I even say it's a fault of PERS. It's
No.
it's something as societally we need to get our hands around.
But at the same time, they make money off this in a way.
Who does?
PERS.
PERS?
With their interest charge. I mean,
Oh,
there's-
sure.
they're
Yeah.
making money. They're not gonna encourage you once you're set to change it anyway.
Yeah, this, you know,
Look
they,
at that.
you know, yes, and they'd be happy if you wrote them a check for
Oh, I bet
$17.2
they
million.
would, but-
So they're probably happy either way.
Yeah.
I'm getting mixed, you know, when I talk to industry experts, including Tom Scaglione. Tom's really smart in finance. Some people will say, absolutely pay it off. Some will say, you'd be crazy if you paid it off. Some will say, if you pay it off, give it to PERS. And some will say, if you pay it off, put it in a side fund. So you hear these, and the answers are all over. So
Oh my God.
I don't claim to know the right answer,
Yeah.
but I can tell you that this isn't probably our best approach.
No.
There's things that we can do that are better than this. For example, we could take PERS up on a 20-year payment plan. If you look at the amount you pay in total over a longer term, you pay a lot more if you're
Yeah.
paying over
Oh,
30
yeah.
instead of 20. But in a 20-year, it's more painful each year.
That's right.
So-
So it's just like your mortgage.
Exactly. So if
Oh,
you want
yeah.
to refinance and go to a 15-year payment, you're saving yourself tens of thousands of dollars in the long run, but can you make the next monthly payment?
Exactly.
Or you can do a
Yeah,
set it with a big balloon payment at 5 that you're planning for.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't happen, you're not.
Susie
stuck.
Orman says you should take a 15-year home loan. That right now.
That's it. Yep.
Who said this?
Susie Orman, she's the.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know
yes,
who
I
she
know
is.
who she is.
Yeah.
Haven't been listening to her lately.
Yeah.
So I think this is the slide where I'm going to say let's stop talking about backwards costs, the past
Move
costs, and let's
ahead.
start talking about the days going forward. So
Uh-huh.
that's called the normal cost.
Yeah.
So what the normal cost is, how much money should we give to PERS this year to cover the increase in PERS responsibilities that happens this year? So the employees that already retired, they don't factor into this. They're just covered
Yeah.
solely by the unfunded accrued liability. But for everybody that's working here today, when they work another year, we better be putting more money so that
Yes.
that purplish bar gets a little higher.
Yep.
And this normal cost is one of those things that makes that purplish bar go up. And the reason it didn't go up is because the market went
Yeah.
the market got flat, so the amount of money we were putting in didn't offset the market. So that's just a formal definition, but here's kind of what it means. So this is a table that shows by fiscal year what the discount rate, and again, the discount rate is what PERS assumes they're going to make in the market.
Right.
And then based on that discount rate, what is the normal cost percentage? What the normal cost percentage is, what percentage of the salary of each of the individuals should you be putting aside every year? So, for example, in the year we're in now, 17-18, CalPERS assumes a 7.5% discount rate, and if they got that, they think about 12.7% is what you should be paying. So
And
if you
that
have
would
an,
keep you at even.
that would keep you even.
Okay.
So don't worry about the past hole
Right.
you've already dug, but for that year. So if you had an employee that made $100,000, you'd give the employee $100,000 and you'd give PERS $12,700
Yep.
to put aside. So as you go from left to right with the discount rate, as the discount rate goes down, that means PERS, that middle bar or middle line of inflow, their assumed money coming into the system through that one is going down, so it has to increase somewhere else. So the normal cost goes up. So it's a zero-sum game. If we're not getting it through the stock market, we have to get it through the
Yeah.
employer. So this normal cost is the charge to the employer. This is not the employee's 8%. So that's separate from this. This is just the district's cost.
Right.
So you can see from 17-18 through the end of this chart, we're going from 12.7% to a 15.2%.
Mm-hmm.
So if you try to put numbers to that, if you look today, our normal cost, if you took that 12.7% and you multiplied it by our salaries, we sent them a check, or will be sending them a check for about $1,050,000. So that's the district share. And then over the next 7 years, again, going out to that 24-25 horizon, it'll go from a little over $1 million to just under $1.6 million. So that's a 47% increase over that 7 years in that line item for the district normal cost. From the employee perspective, so all of us, you'll see in 17-18, it's going to take a big jump next year. And the reason it goes up so much from 17-18 to 18-19, that's when the employee's picking up that last 2%. So the district is shifting a lot of that cost onto the employee up until 18-19, and then the employee's picking up their full 8% share.
Yep.
You'll notice that the bar height does increase every year, even after 18-19. We built in an assumption of a 3% salary increase every year. We had to assume something. So when you look at COLA increases and step increases, assuming an average 3%. So this is what, in addition to what the employer is sending to PERS, this is what the employee is sending to PERS. So you'd add those two up to find
Yep.
out the total normal cost.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, for the employee share,
Wow.
that's a 64% increase from today to the 24-25. So the employee is actually seeing a bigger increase than the employer is seeing.
Glad you're the employee.
Yeah. So what does it all mean? So let's forget about slicing and dicing. Let's add it all up. So this chart does just that. It takes the unfunded accrued liability payment. Remember that 30 years payment schedule? It adds the employee cost, that's the purple bar, and the district normal cost, the employer cost, which is the light blue bar. If you look in the year we're at today, 17-18, collectively between the district's UAL, the district's normal cost, and the employee's cost, we sent a check to PERS, or we will be sending a check to PERS for about $2.5 million. And if you fast forward to 24-25, it'll go up to $4.5 million. So this is per year. So it'll be a $2 million per year increase by the time we get to 24-25, and that's an 80% increase total between all parties. So these PERS costs are real. They're not just made up numbers. It's a significant thing that we have to figure out how to budget. And in about 2 slides, I'm going to tell you why I think it's manageable, even though it seems like a huge number. So again, we had to make some assumptions. So one of is no more EPMC, no more employer paid member contribution.
Right.
The employee picks up their full 8% share after 1920. We assume the 3% increase. And for the chart you're about to see, I'm assuming the district picks up 100% of the normal cost and 100% of the unfunded accrued liability. And before I hit the drum roll and show the final results, when we try to address financial issues, just about any financial issue, we look at it on a year-by-year basis. We do a budget. We adjust rates. We do long-term financial plans, but that's more to see, kind of put things on your radar screen, what's coming up. But when we tackle a problem, we do it on an annual budget. So what I tried to do is I tried to take this chart, and what I did is I compared each year to the year before. So I looked at how much more is 18-19 than it was in 17-18. And then going from 18-19 to 19-20, what did that do? And that's what this chart is. So this is looking at the cost increase compared to the previous year. So when we're going to do a budget and we're going to figure out how much more do I need to budget for those line items, that's what this does. And I'll try to walk you through this. So let's look in 17-18. So compared to the previous year, which was 16 and 17, the employees actually paid about $85,000 more in 17-18 than they did in 16-17 because they picked up a bigger percentage of their PERS. And then going into 18-19, when they pick up that last 2%, they're going to pay 170 or almost 180,000 more in 18-19 than they did in 17-18. So this is comparing just to the previous year. But then after that, they picked up the full 8%. Then they're only picking up that 3% salary increase. That's why that little black bar, it's a small number. That number is 3% of their salary. So if they're making more money, they have to pay a little bit more to PERS.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at the pinkish bars on the district side, so the Vallecitos side of things, in 17-18, the year we're in now, we're paying about 60,000 more this year for PERS than we did last year. Going into next year, so we're in the process of preparing our budget now. We're actually going to figure out, okay, in 18-19, we think we're going to be spending 125,000 more on PERS in next year than we spent this year. And then years after that, you can see what happens. So although these PERS payments will go on forever, and the unfunded accrued liability will go on for about 30 years if we pick the CalPERS 30-year plan, the near future is where we're starting to see the biggest year-over-year increases. So if you look at 2021, with the numbers that we have in front of us, that's the biggest year to the district. That's the biggest impact to the district. Assuming those bottom two bullets, the district picks up all the district costs, normal costs, and the district picks up all the UAL payments. So that's about $330,000 more. In 2021, we'll have to pay $330,000 more than we paid in 1920. So is that a big deal? And that's why I want to try to give some perspective. So we are made up of water and wastewater. So from a budget perspective, we split employee costs, and it's almost 50-50. It's a little more water than wastewater, but it's about 50-50. So from a budgeting perspective, we'd say, and contrary to what the public thinks, we don't have a printing press in the back room. We're not making money. If we need more money, we have to either find ways to save money in other areas to offset those, or we have to adjust it into rates. So let's assume we couldn't find any offsetting savings, and we had to find a way to get all that money through rate increases to
The
our...
330,000.
The 330,000. My experience, people react less to overall numbers, they react more to the changes. So they're already paying a certain rate, and if you kept it that same rate forever, you'd probably never hear a peep out of them. But if you start changing the rates and increasing them, that's when they're going to complain. They're going to call you on it. So that's why I think it's important to point out to look on an annual basis. So let's look at the 2021 number and say, where are we going to find $330,000? So let's assume that we put all of those increases on the water costs. We're not going to hit the wastewater customers, and we're not going to ask the employees to pitch in. So it's kind of worst case, but I'm trying to simplify things. Every year we sell about 6 million units of water. About 14,000 acre feet is about 6 million units of water.
Okay.
Typical single family homeowner uses about 13 units of water per month. If I took that $330,000 and divided it by $6 million, that means I'd have to sell at a nickel to every unit of water if the water customers picked up all this. So that's the perspective I want to get. Right now, Tier 1 water is about $3.28. So to solve the PERS issue, there may be other factors, but just for PERS, we'd have to take that Tier 1 water from $3.28 to $3.33. That's not a crushing number.
No.
Now, there's going to be imported water costs will go up, medical costs will go up, salaries will go up. There's been other drivers, but I'm just trying to give a perspective that it's not, you're not doubling your water rates, you're not even adding 10% to your water rates, you're raising a nickel. It gets better. If we say, hey, let's split it 50-50, water picks up half, wastewater picks up half. So all of a sudden that $330,000 number is about $165,000. And if you split it over the 6 million units, now you're only raising water by about 2.5 cents a unit. And then and if you factor that in over the how many units they buy, it's just not a lot. It's like a 40-cent increase per month.
Yeah.
And then over a year, it's maybe $5.
Yeah.
So over a year. And then the wastewater customers, they'd see about a $2, or I think it's about a $2 a month increase on their bill. So these are not crushing numbers. I think combined, it's going to be about a $4 to $5 in 2021. It'd be about a $4 or $5 impact in that year. And today, a typical A single-family homeowner who buys 13 units of water, their combined bill is about $125. So we're going to say we're going to add another $5 onto that. So if you're already paying $125, if you have now pay $130, it's reasonable.
Yeah.
As long as nothing else went up, but you're
As long
just
as
saying
nothing
this
else
is.
goes up. This is just a fixed PERS.
Got that.
And that's what we're trying to figure that out. A third thing, and I want the board to talk about this, and I've done this, a version of this presentation to all the employees, so you're hearing the same thing that they're hearing. If you bring in a third, so now you have the water customers and wastewater customers, I think there's a place for the employees to share in this too. So now you've taken that number and you're, instead of putting it all on water, now you've cut it on a third. So as a rough example, a third would go to water customers, a third would go to wastewater, and maybe a third goes to the employees. And maybe at a workshop I can show you the numbers, what that would mean to a typical employee, a typical wastewater customer, and a typical water customer. And then you start to get the sense that, okay, this PERS thing, it's not pleasant, but it's not killing us. And one thing I do want to add, that's a nickel every year though. So in 1920 you'd have to add a nickel to a unit, and then 2021 another nickel, then another nickel, and it diminishes, but you know, a nickel here, a nickel there, pretty soon over 7-10 years, okay, you've added another 50 cents or so to my water bill, and that's true, but it's over a period of time.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's worst case because I think there's ways we can size those bars down with some creative repayment for our PERS obligation, which would lower our UAL costs. Again, we can't get into those details right now, but I think that's the last slide I had. Oh, besides the legal challenge, but we'll finish up on this. So, and I get that this was a lot of information, so is there any questions that this raises for?
No, but I'd be interested to hear what you may find out about having some expert or somebody from the outside come and say, you know,
How to address the unfunded accrued
yeah, if you,
liability?
if you do a shell game, or if you
Yeah.
flip
and-
coins against the wall, maybe you can get more money.
Yeah, I think staff could do a good job of maybe coming up with options.
Yeah.
And I always call them bookends. If you did, you know, the bare minimum, you have to do this, and the most extreme is this, and you can do almost anything in between. But in terms of getting into the pros and cons and what it would cost you, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable with our expertise. We're not PERS actually.
Yeah, right.
Here.
No, well, this kind of falls into what you're talking about, is why we were trying to do the policy, rewrite the policy on our investments.
Yeah.
We were going to allow some room for a good investor to raise our 1%
Yeah,
to
but-
2%.
But
Yeah.
what I just heard was, even with that, we're limited as to, you know,
Yep.
do we want to buy
we
Bitcoin?
we
And,
still
you know,
are limited, but I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll never get up to 7% on
No,
your
we're-
internal
no,
investments.
And you know, we have to remember investments isn't our number one goal. It's safety,
No, no,
that's
but-
why, but
If somehow, I mean, just saying, if we took an extra 10 million and put it into PERS and they got their 6%, it would be 3 times more than we're getting.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Exactly,
that's-
I agree with
that-
you.
but-
Yeah, so somebody would have to convince me why it would be a bad idea to
Yeah.
start to pay on the PERS obligation, with the exception of that we're putting money in the reserves for a reason,
Yes.
to handle either emergencies or planned replacement type projects, and we do have some. So I'll be working with James to say when do we think those big planned replacement projects are.
Right.
So for example, if they're 10 years out, maybe we can lend that money or give that money to PERS, and over the next 10 years,
Rebuild it.
between the district and the employees, we can rebuild. We can put
the reserve.
including 1.5%
Right.
rate of return. So
And-
when
And
As
we
you
have
said.
brought our reserves down already from where they were a few years ago. So,
yeah, they've come
so
down.
we-
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
But they're still healthy. They're good,
Yeah,
and they're
and-
well above our minimum
And as you said, we could borrow money at 1.5%
if you needed it.
if you needed it.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think we really need to look at that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I have not come up with corresponding graphs that said, well, what would it cost if
What
if you
yeah.
paid it off, if you took $17 million out of reserves and then budgeted every year to replenish it.
Mhm.
That's not in here, but we
Yeah.
could do that. And
Yeah,
I
okay.
tell you this, it'd be much lower. Our payments to
Yeah.
PERS
Yeah.
would be much lower.
Okay.
So if
Yeah.
somebody has to convince me why it's a bad idea. So here's what somebody told me. So remember those bars. Here's what
Yeah.
you should have. Here's what you do have, and you're $17 million short.
Right.
So if I wrote him a check for $17 million,
And you're there.
fully funded, and next year the stock market tanks, and it says, oh, so the amount of money you have is that it went back down. I didn't really lose that money because if I hadn't funded it, I would have
And
been
we
way
went
down
down to
here.
there, yeah.
So I still got us closer to being funded.
Yeah.
And I think if you get fully funded, then every year going forward, depending what the market does, you're making smaller corrections.
Yes.
If
Yes.
something happens, then every year you can just try to catch up.
Mhm.
What we may be still have a good stock market ahead. It may be going up. Some people have said if you write them a check for 17 million, you'll find you're super funded. If the stock market keeps going up, you'll give it 17 million, and then the market will give you another 10 million. You'll be super funded. That'd be a nice problem to have.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
okay with that. And then we can cut back on our payments until that black bar rises up.
Yeah.
There's too many unknowns to know, but when
Yeah.
you're so far behind, it's hard to catch up in a short period of time.
Yeah. And you know, everybody that I talk to, you know, like conspiracy newsletters that I read, this bubble's going to bust, and that market is going to come down.
Yeah, there's going to be a correction.
Yeah, and so in our overall goal, trying to make sure that we're not from here to here,
Yeah,
because we didn't do anything to get to here, I think we have to look at that.
right. So, but that's
Do
where
you
I think
have
an
the
expert
day?
could help us.
No, I don't have it.
Yeah, just
Oh.
let me know the day
No,
before.
if I did, I would be
before the
right
vote.
there.
You wouldn't be
Yes.
here, would you?
Fortunately, I'm not in the market, so I don't really care.
Right,
But
it's spooky though, isn't it?
Yeah. So the last thing I had in California, there's something called the California Rule. If you won't find it in an actual law book, but it's kind of understood. There was a case, an agency wanted to change its employee benefits to an employee, and they got sued. And the employee said, "Hey, you hired me as a 3% at 60. You can't change it. I'm locked in for life."
yeah,
And it went to a court, and the court sided with the employee.
yeah,
And that became the California rule. And basically it says when as a public agency, when you hire somebody, you've committed for that person's entire career, unless they leave your
Yeah.
agency, but they get to keep those benefits forever.
yeah.
There's a case that's pending now, I don't remember the name of it, it's going through the state Supreme Court that's challenging that.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's a big deal, and public employees are nervous about it.
oh, sure.
So if they lose, if the employees lose, then that means the agency going forward can change the retirement plan. They can say, "Hey, Glenn, I know we hired you at 3 at 60,
Yeah.
but next year 2 at 60."
Yeah,
But they can't go backwards.
yeah.
They can't say, "Hey, for the 20 years you've spent in public service, I can't affect that."
No, no.
So if somebody who's been here for 20 years as a 3 at 60, that is not
Locked
touchable.
in.
And then going forward, it may be a different plan.
Mm-hmm.
So how that affects some of these numbers, we'd have to figure that out, but it certainly wouldn't be good for public employees.
No.
And even for agencies, they'd have to be careful, because what's gonna happen if the California rule is struck down, some agencies may choose to roll back pension benefits, and some may choose not to, and it's gonna be really hard to compete with those other
Oh.
agencies.
Exactly.
If somebody says, "Okay, I don't have to continue to pay 3 at 60, but I'm gonna." Because I
Yeah,
think I'll attract the best and brightest by
Yeah.
doing so. And if you go down to a 2 at 60, guess where all your employees are going to go?
to
They're
the
out
3
door.
at
Yeah.
60, yeah.
So
Mhm.
I
Or
don't
we're
know.
going to leave the public employment.
Yeah, you know, say I might as well go work in
Yeah,
the private
might
sector
as well,
or
yeah.
retire. I don't want to get. I said the same thing to the employees. I don't want to get everybody up in arms, but I want people to be aware that there's things going on out there,
Mhm.
a little bit out of our control, going through the court system. My commitment to the board as well as the employees is we'll keep you updated
Yeah.
and let you know. And if it looks like the California rule is going to be stricken down, then we got to figure out as an agency where we're going.
Yeah.
I don't know if, I think I heard it's at the state Supreme Court. I don't know if it's something that could be challenged to the United States Supreme Court. I don't know, or is this the last stop?
Yeah.
Since it's basically a California thing. But, I would say best case from a selfish perspective, that the California rule stands. And maybe you could say, hey, for future employees, you can do something different. But for current employees, it's tough. If people made
Oh, yeah,
career
but we already,
choices to stay here.
for the future employees, we already have the PEPRA.
Yeah,
So,
true. But
Yeah.
it could affect, you may grandfather say, hey, the employees that are here today, if I get a good candidate as a finance manager,
Oh,
and I
yes.
bring him in and he's a classic employee, he gets 3 at 60.
yeah,
I don't have the ability to say, welcome aboard, but you're now at 2 at 60.
No,
I can't
no,
do that.
no.
A new hire to the
Right.
PERS system is a new employee, he's
Right.
a pepper employee.
Right.
There's no
Mhm.
doubt about that one.
Yeah.
So that's just a minor, I wouldn't say it's minor, it's a major thing, but it's a small side note to what we're talking about today. So I just want to get you up to speed on where we're at on PERS. It's a lot, and I really think a full board workshop is the way to go on this
Yeah.
to
I
get,
do too.
to get the benefit of everybody.
And I would think that surely either prior to or whenever the timing is right, we get that expert from out of town to tell us what else we can do
Yeah.
to maybe maximize our benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
So from a timing perspective, we could do that probably within a couple of months. We still have some more work to do, then we'd have to get somebody on board to help us do some analysis. It may make sense to wait till the 2017 actuarial report is out.
Oh,
That-
yes.
That won't be till August.
Yeah,
So do we want to wait that long, or do we want to get a jump? Maybe we have a workshop on PERS before then, and we'll update you
Yeah.
in August with the new
Mhm.
numbers that come out. But
Yeah.
for what we know today, because the issue doesn't change, we know that there's an unfunded accrued liability.
Right.
It may change, it may become smaller, bigger, or stay about the same in 17, but it's not going to be zero.
no,
We know, so the concept of do we want to pay it off, or do we want to pay a
some
easy
period
payment
of time,
plan?
yeah.
That's a fundamental question we can be
Yeah.
asking ourselves,
Mhm.
regardless of what the number actually
Yeah, I think
is.
so. I don't think you should wait on that.
Yeah,
No,
so
I don't either.
yeah, so my recommendation would be let's have something probably I'd say in the March or April timeframe, and then maybe 4 months after that, when April or August rolls around, we can update you.
Mhm.
But we need to start getting our hands around this.
Yeah.
There's so I talked about this concept where maybe the water customers, wastewater customers, and the staff participate. We need to look into the legality. Can we require a staff member to participate?
Yeah.
So we're asking questions of PERS
I'm
and our
glad because
attorneys.
I was thinking, well, they're already paying 8%, so now are we asking them to pay
Yeah, how
another
much?
0.5%?
Yeah, how
or-
much is enough?
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. If we start asking our employees to pay more, but a Livenhain isn't,
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're all gone.
Yeah.
So we have to be mindful. And that's why what Rondi did with the survey of the benefits is an important thing. We're constantly scanning what's out there because
Oh, yeah.
a Livenhain is our competition. As much
Sure.
as we love them and we work side by
Oh, yeah.
side, for employees, they're the competition.
oh yeah, and it is a stepping stone. I mean, and Rancho Santa Fe, as I was saying, Santa Fe Irrigation District.
Yeah.
I mean, my son-in-law's there working. He's got his head on a swivel, going, okay,
Yeah.
I'm here, and I've been here for 2 years.
What else?
I got something to show.
Yeah.
Maybe I
Get
need
me
to
out
go
of here.
from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's building his resume
Yeah,
now, and he's
yeah.
going to find the agency that's best for him.
yeah,
Well,
So
I thought you did an excellent job.
yeah, it worked out
Thanks.
nice.
I mean, very well,
Difficult,
very
but
succinct.
I got it.
it's a lot. Yeah, to try to put a lot of information into a few slides, it's tough. But I think a workshop will be helpful. I'll spend a little bit of time with Craig before that workshop to get him to the same level that the four of you have now. So I don't want to have to go backwards to go over
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'll be helpful. So,
Okay.
all right.
All
It
right.
was a long long
Yeah.
committee meeting.
Good.
Apologize for that.
It's okay. Important information.
Oh,
Okay, okay.